Everything. We're live now. Hello, everybody. Tawana here, and welcome to Why Read episode 10. And here today, I have two wonderful guests who are first time people on my channel. So I'm super excited to welcome here Hillary from Bookborn. So, hello.
Hello.
Yay.
I'm
And
from Bookborn. I don't know. Do you want me to introduce my channel?
oh, yeah, go ahead. Introduce your channel. I probably should have said that.
No, I'm from the channel Bookborn, and I do video essays on fantasy and sci-fi stuff.
Yes, fantastic. And Kyle from Read by Kyle.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle from Read by Kyle. I read a lot of books. People make fun of me for it. I'm technically a booktuber, but what I actually am is a film a video and tell people I'm going to post it for 2 months tuber. But I do really like live shows. And thanks for having me because I like reading and discussing books.
Yes, I'm happy to have both of you, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit about how you both have a different approach to your channels, I think, than the conventional booktube model that everybody feels like they have to subscribe to, which they don't. But first of all, we always have to start with the question, why read? And another way to think about this is when there are so many other things you could do with your time right now, pick up a video game or, I don't know, do any other activity. Why do you choose to read? And so, Bookborn, let's start with you.
Okay, why do I choose to read? I mean, part of the answer for me is that I don't know any other way. I grew up with a sister who read constantly, and so I read constantly from the time that I could read. So it's just so ingrained in my day-to-day life. But I would say why read is it is a hobby that is fun. It can give you some of the most satisfying stories in any medium, and also can improve your brain. I mean, it does. Vocabulary, like just processing stories in a written form, I think is really good for your brain. And so it's kind of, those are all the reasons I like to read. And it's fun.
Those are all the best reasons. All right. And now, Kyle, what about you?
That's very funny because I thought about this answer ahead of time and Bookborn just said all of my answers, but I'll try and phrase them a different way. So I've always been a reader, but I've also just really liked the art of storytelling for my whole life. And when I think about the things that have really moved me, the things I'm really passionate about, I'm really into TV. I'm really into story form video games and books and stuff. And for a long time, I didn't read that much. I mostly watched TV and I let reading, especially fiction, because I read a lot of nonfiction, fall by the wayside. And so when I thought about why has reading now become more of a thing that I do over TV, I think it's because it hits the perfect trifecta of 3 things that are important to me. One being just that it's fun. I just really enjoy it. The second being that I think it is a more immersive and escapist activity than TV. It's more interactive than watching TV. And then the third reason is that I really like learning, which is just the nerdiest thing, but it's the truth. And I think a lot of people, when they think about the fact that they're learning, they're thinking of nonfiction. And obviously that's true, but you learn a ton in fiction. You're learning from different cultures, different ways people experience the world. Obviously you're learning about better grammar and words and all that kind of stuff, but I just think over time the amount that you learn from either fiction or nonfiction, it really is it really expands my appreciation for the world. And I think that's like a through line of my personality, is that I like to know more about the world that I live in, and I think reading accomplishes that better than anything else.
It's such a good point, Kyle, because I think you also learn about yourself through fiction. There is so much fiction I have read that challenged what I thought and helped me develop what I thought. And if I said which books did that, a lot of them would be fiction, surprisingly, not nonfiction. That has made me expand that worldview.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I'm a big proponent of memoirs. I really like memoirs. I've read hundreds of them. And I think when people don't read memoirs, they misunderstand the appeal. And some people just the celebrity gossip. I'm not saying that's not a thing, but I think a memoir is a really good bridge between fiction and nonfiction, because it's exclusively being told through the point of view of one person, and it's their life experience. And I'm aware going into a memoir that, part of this is them wanting to construct an image, or they want to sell books, or there was a particular like hot button issue that like they're mostly talking about. But even I find that interesting, the way that they're willing to spin something and the way that they want their own story to be told, like the framework of that. So I've always really liked memoirs, and I think it's a genre that I think people brush off very easily because they think it's just like, Jessica Simpson released a memoir. Like, great, I don't care about Jessica Simpson. But I'm like, you know what? I don't care about Jessica Simpson, but I listened to her memoir and I thought it was exceptional. And I feel like I understand the world a little bit better after listening to Jessica Simpson's memoir, because it's a type of person that I have never, like, I have nothing in common with Jessica Simpson. And so to hear her perspective on the world is just like enlightening. And if you multiply that by, reading a lot, you really learn more about yourself and the way other people view the world.
I love that because I read this one nonfiction book at one point, and it was about, and there was this one part of it where the guy was saying, I think he was a neuroscientist, if I'm not mistaken, Dan Siegel. But anyway, he was saying that we all construct narratives in our lives. We all construct narratives to make sense of our lives. And those people who've gone through really difficult situations, the biggest difference between people who've been able to recover from very difficult situations in their lives and those who've remained stuck is that those who've been able to overcome those difficult situations is that they've been able to make sense of that trauma in the narrative of their lives. Like they've been able to make it make sense and I feel like fiction, when we read fiction, it sort of gives us that way of maybe finding options or finding other ways to make sense out of our lives, and reading other people's stories does the same thing. So I get a lot out of memoirs as well. I think that's pretty neat that you do that.
That reminds me a lot of Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, which I think everybody in the world should read, because you can't read that book without coming away from something. But that's his whole thing, is that, if you find a purpose, you can survive any reason for living, or any circumstance, if you can find a reason for living. And so I think that really goes into that.
Yeah. So you two talked about how it's sort of become a routine in your lives, that you find it fun. Have you two been consistent readers your whole lives? It sounds like you both have had pretty busy things too in your life, whether it's children or just different jobs and things like that. So have there been phases where you haven't read as much? Has it been more steady in recent years?
Go ahead, Bookborn.
Yeah, there's actually only one period of my life where I can think of not really reading for pleasure much. And that was at the end of my undergrad and the beginning of my graduate degree. I had so much required reading, and people were like, you don't have to do required reading. Yes, you did. You did have to. Like, you had to say that you did it, and you'd be quizzed on it daily. Like, you had to do it. And so I was just reading so much for school that I just didn't really have the capacity to really read for fun. So there was like that couple years that I was reading very little. It ended up stopping because I think it was during my last year of graduate degree that I finished all the Wheel of Time books. So I don't know how that changed, but that was really the only period. Otherwise, I regularly as a kid turned to books for like emotional support. Now, that sounds wrong. I had like a very close relationship with my family. I had a great family, but like, when you're a teenager and a preteen, you're just dramatic. And so like when I was going through dramatic moments, like I had these books, that's what I would go do. Like I remember when my first boyfriend broke up with me, I went to the library and then I stayed in bed for 2 weeks and read like 15 books. Like that's all I did. I just was like crying in bed and reading books. Like that's how I dealt with like emotional trauma. So I really I can't remember a time other than like maybe that couple of years that I wasn't reading ever.
Wow. That's impressive. I wish I could say the same for me. What about you, Kyle?
So I've always self-identified as a reader, and like, you take those little like quizzes in like middle school and stuff about your reading level. Mine was always like absurdly high, and I just like felt like that was a good, like I was just like, yeah, I have such a high reading comprehension. But I didn't actually read that much because I would reread constantly, because I think, and I'm still a big rereader, but nowadays
that's still reading.
I know that.
I was rereading, not reading.
I know, but listen. But when I actually think about it, I would still not read that much. Like I would just be like, oh, I read A Song of Ice and Fire this year, so like I'm good, like. So, but in my head, if you were to ask me, how I identify, I'd be like, yeah, I'm a reader. I read books. And I just didn't that much. Like I probably, when I started my Goodreads account in like 2017, like there was like 40 books on it. Like, and I'm sure I missed some, but like that's not that much for like a whole lifetime, So it's like a lot of my actual numbers of reading have been more recently. But the only time I stopped reading entirely was also like university. I didn't read. Like I think I only read Storm of Swords. I would just be like, oh, I have a spring break. I'm gonna reread A Storm of Swords. So
I wish I were more of a rereader. I've become more of one, but I haven't until like recent years. But so I still count that as reading, though, for sure. So I'm curious with both of you, and I'm sorry if you've been asked this a million times before, but how did you get started in a booktube? Because I don't think I really know either of your origin stories with booktube. Hillary,
Kyle,
you
you
want to
take
start?
this one. No, Kyle
Okay,
can take this one. Yeah, let
Kyle
Kyle
first.
take this
Okay.
one first.
Yeah.
So
I knew Kyle before he started his book too.
yeah, you're gonna get some credit here if you just shh for a second, okay?
I shouted you out on my channel before you started your channel, Kyle, but you
Yes.
probably didn't even know that.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. I knew the one after I started, but no, what video
Yeah,
was it?
I did. I don't know if I still have that video up because I've been trying to take
Oh, yeah.
down
Well,
older
I
videos that are
appreciate it.
bad. But
No,
but
don't
I
have to
did
do
shout
that.
it. I know I probably shouldn't, but I did do that. I did shout you out in one video because I was on Instagram and I found you somehow, and I saw your review for The Sword of Kaigen. And I loved your review of that, especially because you talked about the male characters and the male perspective in that story. And I know, like, for example, Hillary brought up such great commentary in one of her videos about the feminine perspective in that particular book. And I think that gets brought up a bit, but I just appreciated hearing your perspective because I had never heard it before. So I thought it was really cool. And I remember I brought it up in a video, and then later on I saw you started a channel.
Well,
Go
thank you very
ahead.
much for that.
You're welcome.
Randomly, my friend Tanner, who is in the sphere, people know him. He commented on he was like, "Wow, I just read your like Sword of Kaigen review the other day, and it was like really good." And I'd kind of forgotten what I wrote, so I went back and read it, and I was like, "Oh, I used to like do reviews," and because I was like, "Oh, this is like an in-depth review." But I've just been like busy lately, so it's just easy to do like a paragraph. But yeah, like Sword of Kaigen was like a masterful experience. Like I had so many emotions after that. I made my wife read it like right away, and that was just one of the peak. But yeah, I had a lot of thoughts because like obviously the feminist aspects of Sword of Kaigen are like noticeably extremely well done. But I just felt like it was doing something with the male characters that I don't feel like people handle with nuance very often, and I really like that. But to get back to your original question, I found BookTube through our mutual friend Patrick. I didn't know that BookTube existed, and I started watching a bunch of videos. And I was like, "Wow, this is cool." And my wife was like, you can do this." And I was like, "Yeah, but and I just didn't. And then I was like, "I'll take a half step," and I just did the Instagram. And the Instagram was really great because I just started interacting with a lot of like wonderful people who already had channels. One of them might have been Bookborn. I don't know. I mean, and then, I started getting on Discords and I was talking to people and, everybody was just very, very supportive of me starting a channel. And I overthought it and I like wanted to get like, the best equipment and the best, like start off like, how everybody does. They don't want to start because, they stubbed their toe last week and maybe it'll cause a problem, So, and then to shout out Sarah Reeds here, who I think did an excellent job convincing me because she started a Discord channel on her server called the Daily Kyle Reminder Chat, and people would just jump in there every day and be like, "Kyle, when are you starting a channel?" I was like, "All right, I have to actually."
Oh, that's how
do
that started. I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that part of her Discord, but I didn't know
yeah.
what
We've
that was
changed it
about.
now to Kyle Clarifies because that's the new
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
But yeah, and that was that was very good. Like just I had so much support from everybody, and yeah, and then I was really into it for like a month. And then I decided I hated editing, and so now I release a video every once in a while. But I
You
still
were
love
into it for
BookTube.
more than a month. You have
I know.
plenty of
I'm
videos
being.
up there.
I'm just.
I'm trying to give
No.
you credit, Kyle.
I know. But no. Like, what happened was I started editing on my phone because I didn't know anything else, and then I got Filmora on my computer, and I learned that for like 6 days, and I was like, "This is great. This is awesome." And then I didn't know that there was a big watermark if it's a free version. And so I couldn't use Filmora because I didn't want to pay for it. And so then I was just defeated. And I was like, I guess I have to go back to my phone. I don't want to learn a third editing software. And that's still my struggle.
We like
Oh,
you on live
wow.
discussions.
I use
Yeah.
iMovie, which is
Yeah,
free on
people
my
say it's
Mac.
good. Yeah.
Well, it's very basic. So I have not upgraded past that, but yeah. What about you though, Hillary? How did you start your channel?
So my story starts a long time ago in like 2015, which was that I wanted to start a book blog because I've loved books and I always had all these ideas. In fact, I have a file on my computer that's like me writing scripts, like for a blog though, like blog posts, I guess I would say. And I was like, I just don't have time. I had the time I was thinking of doing this, I had an 8-month-old and I had gotten a job where I was working part-time in office and then part-time from home while taking care of my child, which if anyone has done that, it's a terrible idea. Don't do it. It doesn't work. So I was just like busy. So I kept putting it off. I even like, I had bought a domain name. I had like coded the entire thing. Like it was like I had designed it. I set up all of these social media accounts and I just thought I will leave it until I have time. And then 2016 passed, then 2017 passed, then 2018. And in 2019, I was like, well, either I'm going to like follow my dream or I'm not. So I start to prepare and everywhere is like, if you want to start a blog in 2019, don't. Blogs are dead unless you're established. Like that's what the internet told me. And so then I was like, well, it's too late for me. I guess I won't. And it was actually my husband who was like, well, you should get on YouTube. And I was like, that sounds like my worst nightmare. And so he bought me a camera so I'd feel guilty and use it. So that was December 2019. And then I did a bunch of research and prepared and then launched it in June 2020, which is funny because it really had nothing to do with the pandemic. But then like everyone launched a channel in 2020 because of the pandemic.
That's so true.
But it had been like years and then months in the planning. Like I spent months prepping to start my channel, which is why actually like my channel artwork and stuff has not changed since the beginning because that was like very premeditated. But one thing I will say is the name Bookborn goes back to 2015. Yes, has been the power of guilt. Like he's really good at using that. But Bookborn, actually Zach came up with that name. I'll give him credit there. He likes getting credit for that. Back in 2015. So that has been my title since like for a long time. That name has been in my head.
Wow, that's amazing. And did you always have the idea of doing video essays for your channel?
Not in that terminology. I didn't know what I was writing was video essays, but a lot of my original blog posts weren't reviews. In fact, I've repurposed a lot of those blog posts into videos. But I did think I would do more reviews. I think when I started, I thought I would do more reviews and just quickly realized that like that wasn't my forte. It's just not necessarily something I'm super talented at is doing a straight up book review. And so that's why I just started to go strong in the video essay section.
I love your video essays. I mean, they seem like they're so well prepared. And I'll be honest here, like I've tried to get usually I watch booktube videos when I'm eating. So I watch booktube when I'm eating breakfast and lunch and dinner most of the time. And I've tried to get away from watching it during the day. So I've tried not to watch so much booktube lately because it's just too much.
Taking over your life.
It has taken over my life a bit more than it should. And so I've tried to avoid at lunchtime. I'm like, I'm not going to watch booktube during lunchtime. And then suddenly Bookborn posts a video essay and I'm like, click, like
so
it'll be
nice.
like 0 views. And I'll be like, click, because they are so compelling. They are so compelling. And you always pick such interesting topics. So I am a sucker for video essays, but they're also very well researched. So they seem like they take a ton of time. It seems like it would take me a lot more time to do that than it would probably a review, but
it does, which is why I try to alternate it. I call it like time-consuming videos, non-time consuming videos. And I try to alternate it week by week. Yeah, my dream would be to be like the other video essayists I love and only post like a video once a month so that I could spend a whole month like just deep diving. But the YouTube algorithm just doesn't like that unless you're famous. So
I will say, Bookborn already knows this, but just for everybody else, I used to never comment on YouTube videos. Like Bookborn was one of the first booktubers that I followed, like top first 5 or 7 or something like that, and I just never commented.
I didn't know that. That makes me feel good.
Well, yeah, there you go. But her video essays would be like, because I didn't have like book friends that I could like talk to, like, because like it just was different. And so when she would have an essay, I'd be like, yes, I have thoughts. And so I would go and I would just leave huge messages. And then I would be like, sorry for the huge message. And then she would respond. And then over time we became friends. And then now I don't respond to her videos. I just put like trolls in the comments. Because...
Yeah. It is funny. That's one of my favorite things about my community, actually, is that I inspire people to write me essays. Like there are some comments that are like 5-paragraph essays. And they do take me a long time to read, but I do love that people engage that way. Like very rarely do I have people be like, great video. They're like, I have thoughts and I need to express them. And I love that. But yeah, that is how Kyle and I became friends. You had lots of thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm just overfilled with thoughts. It's a problem.
Well, and I just want to say to Kyle too, I mean, I think I was sharing this with Evie recently because she was saying that she doesn't have the type of channel that where she has the typical wrap-ups, TBRs, book reviews, and that kind of thing. She does do some book reviews, but it's more live streams these days. And I just don't think, look at these 2 channels, everybody. There's no one right way to booktube. And I don't know where anybody gets the idea that you have to follow a certain rule. And I know that there is a lot of pressure with the algorithm, but I don't know. I think that you could be successful in different ways. I don't think that you necessarily have to gravitate towards one specific path.
Yeah, I actually am curious. So Kyle, I know you watched a lot of BookTube before getting on BookTube. What about you? Like, did you watch a lot of BookTube before starting your channel? Joanna?
Oh, sorry, for me?
Yeah,
yes. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking Kyle for some reason. Yeah, yes, I was actually going to say that when Kyle was saying about how he was more of a lurker, because I was a big time lurker on BookTube for years. I think I discovered BookTube through when I was watching the last season of A Game of Thrones, that series, and I had nobody to talk to about it. And I found Daniel Green's commentary on that season, and I really enjoyed that video. And then somehow the algorithm figured out, oh, she likes books or something. I don't know. Or I like fantasy. Because at the time I had always loved YouTube, but I had never gotten into BookTube until then. And at the time, the algorithm just knew I was female and liked fantasy. So it just pulled me in the direction at the time of a lot of YA fantasy booktubers, because that's what the market was at the time. It was mostly YA fantasy booktubers. And I didn't have a problem with that because I had taken such a long break from reading at that time, and I was trying to get back into it. And I was getting back into it with like the Witcher series and the Mistborn series. But it was helpful to read a lot of YA fantasy, honestly, because I think I really missed having that female perspective. And a lot of YA fantasy has a female protagonist. And that was something I think I really missed in a lot of adult fantasy growing up. So I started getting really into that and watching a lot of channels, a ton of channels. But it wasn't until I think Jessie May, I found out about her channel, and she shouted out Alan's channel, that I just got so excited. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody who talks about adult fantasy and who is more my age, because I thought I was just too old for BookTube. And I found Alan. I'm like, yay, somebody who's old. Sorry, Alan. And but I loved his channel. I like binge watched all his videos, and I somehow ended up, I think, following him on Instagram, and he followed me back, and somehow we end up interacting. And so I got the courage to start commenting on his videos, and he was so, so welcoming and kind and nice.
This is a whole new Alan I'm hearing about.
It was a different Alan back then. And so back then that was how I got into the BookTube community, really, because of Alan. He started saying, join Discord. And so I joined Discord, and I started, then the algorithm figured me out at that point, because then it directed me to people like Philip. And so I discovered Philip's channel not long after that. And that was actually just how I came out of my shell. And eventually,
and I wonder, I always ask that question because I actually had not seen a single BookTube video when I started my channel. And so I do think that influenced, I think that influenced how my channel progressed, because I didn't know there were these things that most booktubers did. I didn't know. Like, I just didn't know. And so I think that helped me early on be like, okay, I don't have to do certain things to be considered a booktuber. And so I do think that helped me a little bit. It also was a negative because I didn't have the community that you guys had. So like I built it backwards. So like
That's
I have a community
amazing.
now, but it you know, it was different. And so I'm always curious to hear that. Yeah.
That's incredible. But you were also really it seemed like because I remember some of the first videos I ever saw of yours come up. I think you actually came up in my feed one time for the Cosmere Connections or something like that.
Yes.
So you were already really part of a lot of fandoms at the time. Would you say that's
Yeah,
fair?
so I've been a part of fandoms forever, but just not in the YouTube sphere. Like I was more on like internet boards and I was more of a lurker. Like so
Same.
yeah, like I would lurk on the 17th Shard or I'd lurk on all like the Wheel of Time chat boards. Like that's kind of where I was. I just wasn't in the YouTube. Like on YouTube, I really only watched video essayists for the most part, and they weren't like in the book sphere. So yeah, it was, I didn't even really know there was people talking about books on YouTube. Like it just never occurred to me.
Wow.
I know
That's
that
so
people talk
impressive.
about the community being awesome, but like I really like, you know, I made so many friends through this, and I would have never done it. If, you know, people aren't. Hello, Alan.
Hey, Alan, what's up? We haven't been talking about you.
That is the perfect face for this. Alan, you are very kind. I actually, hand to God, I literally swear I was just about to compliment you. I swear. I'm like literally. I don't even want to tell this story now that you're here, but I'm going to. What I was going to say is, you know, I made a lot of friends and like people really like pushed me to start a channel, but also like everybody was just so welcoming. Like I got like 100 subscribers on like my first day. And I know like for sure that if I had to like post videos and get like 0 views and like 1 view and like 0 views, I would have just quit. Like I know, and you're a champion. You are truly a champion. I do not have the self-esteem for that. My
you
goal
think I
is
have
not.
the self-esteem for that? It's you have to
You're a
go
warrior.
through it.
That's all I'm saying. I couldn't have done it. And you know, so just that initial like burst of support from everybody was really awesome. And the person I was going to shout out is the person who just crashed our stream because Alan was very, very nice. And I remember specifically when I first started my Instagram, I messaged Alan and we had barely ever spoken. And it was just so funny. Like, I just like not how we interact at all now. I'd be like, hi, Alan. I don't know if you know me, but I really like your videos and I'm starting an Instagram and I would really like if you would follow me just because we could talk about books more. And now here we are and we're enemies.
Kyle, that's so embarrassing.
I know.
I'm just kidding. You didn't write me a nice message like that.
Yes, I
You were
did.
just like,
Yes,
look at
I
this
did.
stupid video. No, I'm just kidding. You did not say that.
No, I did.
You wrote me a very nice
There was a couple of, it was like you, Library of a Viking, Alan, because I was very nervous about entering the community as like a person that also made content. So like I didn't know how to interact with anybody.
It's so funny because I did the same thing. Like I remember Alex Nieves, he like shouted me out for my background on his channel once. And I had like 80 subscribers and he had 1,200. And I just thought, I can't even talk to this guy. Like he has 1,200 subscribers. Like how could I talk to someone like that? Which is so funny knowing Alex. Can you imagine anyone who's less like self-important? But I had this idea that everyone was going to be so self-important. And I was so scared to talk to anybody. And it's just like not the vibe, at least in our area of BookTube. Just not the vibe. People just aren't that way.
Yeah, like I don't do it anymore, but for a long time I did go on like movie sets a lot because my dream was to be an actor for so many years, and I was background like fairly often in like 2017-ish around there, and the main reason I stopped doing it is that like those people were just like ludicrous. I just couldn't stand them because like everybody would be like, well, I've been in 5 movies this year, and that guy just walked in. He was Sean Penn's butt double, and like, you know, just like all this crazy, like just this guy's cousin was a security guard for Eddie Murphy. Like I don't care, and like it was just rife with that kind of stuff, and I just really didn't like that vibe. And I guess I just assumed that YouTube would be the same way, where it's like you can't talk to people if they have more subscribers than you and stuff, and it's just not the case at all.
Now you just name drop like, oh, me and Bookborn are doing a collab. Oh, by the way, Bookborn and I
Well,
are
she is
collabing on this.
She is 20K Bookborn now. So.
I know. Notice how she tried to play the humble. Like I was so afraid to talk to 1,200 sub Alex Nieves. I have 23,000 subs.
What, you think that I'm lying about that? Like, I still get hives to ask people to be on live streams with me. Why do you think I live stream with like 4 people? It's like at this point, you, Kyle, and Leanna, and Jimmy sometimes.
You have never asked me to be on a live stream except one time.
That was the best live stream. That was the number one live stream.
Wait.
I agree. And
Alan always likes to lie. Just last month, I was like, Alan, what are we going to live show about? What are we going to rant about? And he's just like, no.
I said, tell me what you want to rant about. I said, I can rant about anything. Pick something. That's what I said.
I gotta think of a good. I gotta think of a
Oh,
good.
I have something I want to bring up. So I want to ask you about your video about spoilers don't matter. I've been eager to bring this up. Do you think spoilers don't matter after doing that research? Because I know there was that research paper.
No, I don't even agree with it. Like, I know the research is true. This is fun. And I know Alan's going to get me in so much trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I brought this up during, like, I had the opportunity recently to go and film stuff for Brandon Sanderson's channel. And we had dinner. And I brought this up to him and he knew the research. Sanderson was like, oh yeah, I read that study, and was like talking about it, which was what? What are you getting mad at me about?
I'm mad at you that you're like, of course Brandon Sanderson knew, because we started with this.
What those people do.
We were like, oh, Brandon Sanderson talked about this on his podcast.
Yes, he started on a podcast, but it was just like, Kyle. And so I know we talked about this, but he was talking to me about it, which I thought was interesting because, like, of all the acoustics
in the throne room,
of all the series that I would expect someone to be like, spoilers matter, it's the Cosmere for me. Like, I even talk about that in my video. Like, I don't want someone to spoil it for me. So for him to be like, yeah, like it doesn't matter, was like a really weird thing. Because you would think, I'm still really spoiler phobic. I don't even read the backs of books a lot. Like, I just want to go in, no expectations. It did help me contextualize though. Like, if you get spoiled, it's not the end of the world. Like, to stop feeling like, now I'm not going to enjoy the book anymore. Because like, we all accidentally spoil ourselves. Like, at some point you're going to do it. Yeah. And so I do think it's more like, one thing I talk a lot on my channel is like, the internet just is so, what's the word?
Unnuanced.
Yes, perfect. The internet is so unnuanced and it's so reactive. Like, it's so reactive. Something happens and everyone has to react immediately. And spoilers, I think, have become like so overblown on internet spaces, like especially Reddit, where, people are saying I've ruined their Secret Project 1 experience because I said the title of the book after it came out. Like, it's so reactive. And I think my purpose on those videos is not necessarily to say like, you shouldn't care about spoilers. It's to just be like, let's not react so extremely to things. Like, that's my thesis statement for almost any video you watch of mine, which is like, just stop reacting.
Yes.
The spoilers that bother me are character deaths and endings. Like, if people could stop talking about the endings of books and character deaths, I would be fine. Because if I think it would be in the trailer of a movie, like back when trailers were decent, it's not a spoiler to me. Like, anything happens in the first 2 chapters, or like, the first like beginning, is not a spoiler to me. I read the backs of the books because I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? And if I'm going to tell someone what the book's about, I'm going to try to get them to sell it. Like, here's the inciting incident. Like, it's on the back of the book.
Except Robin Hobb. Don't read the back of Robin Hobb's books.
Okay, I won't. But like, when people, I was talking with Jimmy today about a book, and I'm not going to say it, but like, there was a book that before I read it, everyone was like, oh man, oh, that ending, holy crap. And the problem is I had like 7 pages till the end of the book, and it was a very peaceful, like, it was a very serene scene that was like wrapping stuff up. And I'm like, well, this can't be what they're talking about. Very clearly the shoe's going to drop. And sure enough, it did. I would have enjoyed it so much more. Like, I would have been like, oh, instead I was like, oh, there it is. And then, when I was reading a series, I had a character death spoiled, which didn't ruin the book. It doesn't ruin the book, but like that, like, character deaths can be such a like powerful punch if you do not see them coming, if they're not telegraphed. And so I don't, Jimmy and I were talking, like, I don't know how we stop people from doing that because they're excited. But like, what if people stop saying, and oh man, that ending? What if we just said, like, you know what? It was really good. The book was exciting. There were lots of twists and turns I wasn't expecting. And man, there were a couple things that happened that I was not ready for. Why do we have to like focus? Like, even if you just say the end section, like the end section of this book was like, that's cool. But when we say the ending specifically, it's like, man.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Totally agree.
that's my take.
Yeah.
I have like 7 million thoughts about this topic. This is like one of the topics I have the most amount of thoughts on. So I'm going to try and not talk too much. So first of all, I agree with Bookborn quite a bit about all of this. I think we see I don't follow my own advice that much. Like, I would prefer to not be spoiled, but I do think that, like, if I get spoiled, I'm trying to remind myself that, like, it's fine. And I have 2 recent examples that kind of fly in the face, because I think there's a difference between a spoiler and an expectation, because an expectation is something that you do it to yourself. And a spoiler is something that is somebody else does to you that can then form an expectation. But that expectation is what I think matters. So if somebody says to you, you know, Bob dies at the end of this book, and your expectation now is your enjoyment of that book is whether or not Bob is going to die, then your expectation now becomes that it's going to change your enjoyment of the book. And then that is where it becomes a problem. So an example is I just finished the second book of Red Rising, and I'm going to fall into this trap a little bit by saying that people really hype the end of the second book to Red Rising. And it's not that they end it as like, it's a great ending. They hype it as like the last couple pages. And I just kept hearing the last couple pages. And, you know, somebody else recently on a live stream was talking about the second book, and they were like, oh, you know, they said a specific thing that I'm not going to repeat, that made me lean a certain direction about how the ending was going to go. And it wasn't a spoiler, but combined with other things.
Okay. Since Kyle went ahead and spoiled it, that's the book I was talking about.
Oh, awesome. Nice.
You went ahead and said the book, so it's fine. That's the book I was talking about.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I'm in the process of writing like a review for the book, so that's why it's and so that did impact, because my expectation for the ending was a certain way, and I still thought it was a great book, but it definitely affected my feelings on the book overall. Conversely, I also just read Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane not that long ago, and I had that book for 10 years, and I never read it because I knew the twist from the movie. Like, I watched the movie, and that movie just blew my mind. And I had the book. I was like, well, I know the thing. So if I know the thing, I'm not going to like this book. And finally, over time, and after learning that, you know, spoilers aren't as big of a thing that people tend to think it is, I read Shutter Island, and I knew the thing, and it allowed me to appreciate the book more. Maybe the ending would have just blown my mind if I didn't know it, but I appreciated all the foreshadowing, all the other things going on in the book way more. And
interesting.
Part of it too is that when we think back on an experience, we think about the high point and the end point most often. So especially really bombastic, crazy endings are going to stick in your mind the most because they're the high point and the end point. It's why people overweigh endings, and why people overweigh things like character deaths and really explosive twists. And so when they think back on an experience, they think, I only liked Mistborn because of this twist, or I only liked this book because of these twists. But when you actually, if you were to like diarize your thoughts as you were going, it's mostly unlikely that the only thing you enjoyed about those books were the twists or the character deaths or the big spikes in emotion. It's just what you remember the most. So I think it gives people an overweighted sense of how much a spoiler affected them retroactively. Whereas if people then get a spoiler and they get upset, then going forward, they're like, I don't want to read this book because I know. Just like my friend Benghis Khan is reading Fire and Blood right now. And he didn't want to read Fire and Blood originally because he was worried that the knowledge of the show would be impacted by reading the book. And he's absolutely loving the book. And that's like, you know, expectations play into that. And I'll stop talking now. But the point is, you know, I think it really just depends on how you frame the spoiler.
Interesting. And it's also interesting, by the way, about what Sanderson said, back to your point earlier too, Hillary, because I was spoiled for something that happened at the end of Words of Radiance. And maybe I overreacted to that. So maybe part of that was me overreacting, because the whole time I was like, but I know what's going to happen.
I don't think you were. I don't think you were. I would be really annoyed if someone spoiled a Sanderson book to me. But it also, people brought this up in my comments, and I thought it was a really good point. It also has to do with how close you are to a property. Like, I'm really, my heart is very close to Sanderson. So like a spoiler for a Sanderson book is going to bother me more because I have this expectation of an experience there. Whereas like, you know, there's like a coalition of like 10 people right now trying to get me to read Game of Thrones. And I did a live. Oh, I've done another live with Alan. Bad blurbs. Thank you very much. It's coming back to me. I did this thing where I was going to write bad blurb. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What I did was I went and read the whole synopsis for Game of Thrones so I could write a question about it. And what was funny is like, I read the whole synopsis and then I was like, I kind of want to read this book now though. It sounds really good.
You should.
And it was like
You'll
this
like it.
weird thing where like I had just spoiled myself on the entire plot of the story. And rather than me being like, now I don't have to read it, instead I was like, I'm kind of interested though now because this sounds like it'd be really good. But I had no like connection to Game of Thrones. Like I didn't think I was ever going to read it. So getting spoiled on it doesn't influence, I think, my enjoyment. Like I think I could go read Game of Thrones and it would not bother me that I know so much about Game of Thrones at this point. And so I do think like Kyle said, expectations and how tied you are to a certain experience while viewing something is going to matter. So like, it's just, I don't think it's cut and dry. I just would say as a general statement, we overstate
I like being surprised, and I'm not usually very adept on picking up foreshadowing in books. So I am one of the ones who is always surprised. So when it's spoiled, I'm like, man, like I like being like, oh crap, what the?
Yeah.
And you know, I watch.
And that's the experience you're tied to, and it's like totally valid. So it's going to matter more for you than maybe someone else who like usually guesses stuff or whatever it is.
Like right now,
I think it's a fascinating topic.
I watch spoilers for all the Marvel stuff now because I don't care anymore.
Yeah, me too. I have officially. I just like I Google the plot. Like I just want to know who's in the movie.
I watch pitch meetings now, which spoil things.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Great.
But that's a really good. Sorry, I was just going to add really quickly. That's a really interesting point, though, about how close you are to the material, because I know in that research study, I mean, those participants weren't close to the short stories they were reading. You know,
we need to do so much more research on this. That is definitely just a start. I think there's a lot of, and you know, like I read a bunch of articles too, and there's a couple like researchers who are using those small studies to get more detailed studies on spoilers, because I think it's such a new phenomenon, especially like widespread.
It is new because of the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, not like the internet's new, but it takes a long time for those trends to manifest themselves. So
I had my friends spoil Fight Club for me without the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely get spoiled, but it is more pervasive now because before it had to be a friend. And now you can accidentally stumble upon something a lot easier.
Anyway. And I feel like on Discord, sometimes I get the reputation of being like a spoiler police, but I actually don't care that much. It's that I don't know what other people care about. And like, I think people like Wheel of Time fans, I think are the absolute worst for this. And I always point it out to them because the series is so long that I think they just forget. They'll just be, oh, this character's great in book 13. And I'm like, this character's going to almost die 15 times before book 13. Could you not tell everybody that happens? But, and so by the time I got to the end books, I just knew like almost all the characters that were going to live. And, you know, that's kind of frustrating. But like, so I think of like a book like Project Hail Mary, where I would not tell people too much about Project Hail Mary, just blanket statement. But I do know some people who would like the book more if they knew what it was about. And so if I was to say like, oh, Joanna, like, I think you would like this book. And you'd be like, oh, I don't know. I don't really read sci-fi or whatever the thing might be. I could then be like, no, I think you would like it because of this thing. So I think knowing the person also really helps as to what might get them interested. Yeah. And yeah, it's just a nuanced thing. There's not going to be a one size fits all for everybody.
And Kyle and I. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the biggest problem with all of this research, and something that's so frustrating, but just is that all of this kind of research relies on self-reporting, and self-reporting is notoriously unreliable. And so, unfortunately, it's like probably just things we won't have a lot of answers to, because it does rely on all of what you're going to say, and people are going to lie to make themselves look better or not understand themselves. And so that is a very frustrating part of reading research.
There are ways to get around self-reports as being too like I actually read one of the studies, and I don't remember the exact methodology anymore, but it was partially like, because it's so baseline, they were just like, did you enjoy this or not? And so the fact that they enjoyed it, even though they had a spoiler, like you're going to know pretty well if you enjoyed it. Like, yeah, there's going to be a small section of people that are just going to be like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to say, or like whatever. But for the most part, the more general stuff is going to be accurate self-reporting.
Fine. I think that if you got into like the fandom spaces,
Yes,
people would
I
have
agree.
too many preconceived notions. Anyway,
Well,
what were
Kyle
you
and
going to
I
say,
are,
Alan?
are dealing with a really interesting version of this, is reading historical fiction. Kyle and I are reading in the
been
read
wild.
along, we're reading about Cicero in the 1st century BC. And how much is a spoiler? It's history that happened 2,000 years ago. And so we've agreed the only thing we talk about is that Julius Caesar gets killed. Like, Julius Caesar is going to get killed. Like, everyone should know that Julius Caesar was assassinated. But like these other historical events that aren't super well known, but like Kyle and I know, we have to be really careful not to spoil, even though like it's already happened. This happened 2,000 years ago.
It's been
I'm
wild
sorry,
to
if
see
it's
that.
history, you can spoil it.
Oh, no. Like, it's that these people that we're in the read along with specifically are like, we don't know what's going on. We want to remain unspoiled.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're doing that like out of respect. Like, I agree. If
I see.
if I accidentally was just like, this happens to Cicero, like, I mean, you could just Google that, but it's been really interesting because Anitha has no idea most of this stuff, and she's just been floored by all the stuff that's happening with Cicero.
That happens in my classroom. Is like, it makes me mad when students I've had before spoil, for example, the Cato's finale, right? With students that are taking my class now. And even though it's history and it's stuff that happened in Latin class, the whole only way I can get these kids to pay attention is to frame it as a narrative and have them, every week, like, okay, what's going to happen to my character? Oh, I love Cato. What's going to happen to Cato today? You know what I mean? And so when they know, it's less impactful when these things finally arrive.
Because it builds a sense of anticipation. That's actually a really good educational tool, is to build that sense of anticipation.
I wish I had a history teacher like you, Alan, because
I know
people teach history poorly. Before we move on, I want to respond to Fit to be Read's comment about spoiling him would really diminish the reading experience. I'm not taking that away from you. A lot of people feel that way, but I feel totally the opposite for some people, because the type of story it is would really attract some people to it. And that's the inherent issue. That's why I used it, is that some people I feel like will only pick it up for that
I think
thing.
there's always exceptions.
Yeah, but I think it's a large portion of the audience. I don't think it's not like have you read Project Hail Mary?
I have not.
Okay, well,
I have, and I agree with you, Kyle.
Yeah, it's more just like a genre. It's like what genre the book is.
Well,
people, I think, have a very different expectation of what Project Hail Mary is, and I think you could get a lot of people to read it who wouldn't normally. Yeah. I had a friend that I got to read it, being like, "It's not what you think it is." So, yeah.
Also, that book is just excellent. People go read it.
Very good.
I still haven't read it, but it's interesting though, because we were talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, because without giving away spoilers, what happens at the end of book 1, at the time when that book came out, I think was a huge deal. Like, I don't think you ever saw that happen before. And I've noticed that people who are new to the series who read that, they're like, oh, it's kind of predictable. I'm like, but I don't think you realize how influential that ending was on what took place afterwards. I'm guessing, but I don't know. It's just interesting to see that. But I agree that more research needs to be done. And that's such a good point about self-reporting. I wonder the same thing about, I've been thinking about this for a long time. Like, if there could be some kind of methodology that could really show us whether the audiobook experience is better than the reading the book visually experience.
Well, there is a lot of research on that. I've looked into it.
I think it would depend on a lot of factors.
It depends on a lot of factors, and what your goal is basically what they discovered, like what your goal of reading is. Here's what I suggest for everyone. Just take a basic stats class. I really love stats. And I say this all the time. I'm just like, there are free courses online to help you understand.
What kind of time do you have?
Well, no, I studied this in school. So I taught stats. That was like my job in school. I worked my way up from a TA to I got to teach like the entry level stats while I was at university. And this had nothing to do with my major. I just sincerely love stats. Like, I took the stats class and was like, this is I love it. And it will change your worldview, because people think it's more math than it is. It's really understanding how studies are performed, and it will help you have so much more literacy on what numbers can tell you and what they cannot tell you. And how they are collected matters in what you can glean from them. And numbers just lie all the time. Like, you should never look at a statistic and not ask, where did it come from? Like, I am the person scrolling to the bottom and is like, what was the methodology? How was it collected? Because it matters. And so, like, just take like a free online stats course. It doesn't have to be like a huge deal, but just being clued into that stuff helps so much.
Basically, every education study, it comes from in a like little glass cube with not children that are not real, from people who have never been in a classroom. We conducted this on our my buddy and kid sister that are dolls from the 90s. And they obeyed everything that we told them to do because we put them in small groups and said, here, learn this crap on your own. Yeah, okay. Project-based learning. Sure. Because kids unsupervised definitely are productive.
On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I hated my stats course. It's the only course I've ever had to take twice.
Did you take Bookborn?
And no, listen to the rest of my story, Alan.
Kyle, you would not have had to take it twice if you were in my class. Like, I was known for that. I could get anyone to pass
the
that
reason I had
class.
to take it is because I hate math and stuff. But anyway, so I had to take it twice, and I had to take principles of research methods for psych, it's just stats, but applying stats to psychology. So I've taken stats 3 times and I've hated it every time. But I will echo what Bookborn is saying, is that it has absolutely changed the way I view any sort of anything regarding science. And I think it, like, so many people, like, it just, you don't need to know that much. You just need to know the basics. And if you know the basics, it literally revolutionizes the way that you deal with data. Like, it's just different. Hello, Christina.
Hey, Christina. You have it muted. Party crasher.
Yeah. I told my wife she could crash the party, but she's terrified of appearing on the internet, so she won't.
No, I was just telling her that I'm trying not to like over talk over them, since they are the actual guests and I am.
No,
we're happy you're
here. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Yeah. It's so helpful to know even just a little bit about how to get through a research study and understand and break it down, especially when we see things and how the way that research is disseminated in the media is so poorly handled.
Also, the only recommendation Bookborn has ever taken from me, I just was like, this book has a lot of stats, and she read it and she really liked it, and she hasn't.
It was Factfulness. Someone just talked about it in the comments,
Factfulness by Hans Rosling is one of my favorite books. There's a lot of stats.
I'm sorry, I've gotten behind.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I didn't know Evie had read it. It's a very good book.
Yeah.
But
that's literally
Moneyball,
I've told
Advantage.
Bookborn so many fiction books. I'm like, listen, we like all the same things. You'll really like this book. And she's like, great. Doesn't do anything about it. I mentioned the word stats, and she's like, I'm getting it right now. I
read it that same week. It was great. I loved it.
I tell the kids to always like figure out where their information is coming from, not in statistics wise, but like when they're being told something, what is the person trying to sell you? What is the purpose of what they are telling you? And we get really good examples because we're learning about Alexander the Great, and we have 2 biographers. We have Arrian, who is a Roman soldier, like many hundreds of years later, who is an absolute Alexander stan. And in every single account, he like makes Alexander look as good as possible. Then you've got freaking Diodorus, who is like, no, the winds didn't blow the wind back because the gods favored him. They trudged through knee-deep frozen water for an entire day. And it's like, these are the 2 accounts. You can decide which one that you believe. Like, Arrian is really trying to, build up Alexander for the Roman audience, while Diodorus is more trying to give a more neutral account. And then the other biographer is like, look at this geography. Look at the mountains in this desert. Also, Alexander was there, but look at this cliffside. And it's just like, Curtius, stop talking about the freaking cliffs. He's obsessed with geography.
This is why you don't like Lord of the Rings.
I mean, yeah, Tolkien's like, hey, look at these trees. Also, there's some hobbits, but look at the trees.
Yeah, I think Alan, that's kind of what we talked about on our live, the one that you pretend is the only live we've ever done, which was just like a lot of illiteracy. I don't think it's illiteracy is not the right word, but is people's inability to parse information, like how to parse whether what they're reading is trustworthy or not trustworthy. And it's a skill that I'm glad you're trying to teach your kids.
Part of the reason is that they don't want to take the time. Like part of it's they don't care. The other part is, well, that'll take too long. So what if I just repeated this as fact? It's like, guys.
There's so many people that don't even read the article, or like, listen, Bookborn's comment section, the 2 minutes after she posts a video, those people should just be thrown out wholesale. Like, I'm just like, you didn't watch this.
Yeah, when it's a 30-minute video and they comment 2 minutes in, it's like YouTube only lets you go up to 2 times speed.
Yeah.
You have to be at least 2 minutes before
you are
go.
just responding to the title of this video.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask, because I brought up the whole audiobook thing. Now I'm curious about those research studies that you were talking about, Hillary. So maybe you can point me in the direction of them at some point.
Yeah,
but,
I will. I'll send them to you. It's been a while since I read them. I found them, but they're interesting. I'll send them to you.
Yeah,
I have a couple bookmarked, and I haven't read them.
I did find one that was interesting a while back, and it's been a while, but it was talking about comprehension of audiobooks and the speed at which we can comprehend audiobooks, and how that closely matches apparently.
I can't talk about this with Alan here. Alan needs to leave. I
haven't said anything, Joanna.
You will.
What did you say? Go ahead. What are you going to say, Alan? Go ahead.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm saying that Kyle is about to have a fit about this.
I will, for sure.
Yeah,
I'm 100% about to have a fit, but no, tell your story.
Well, I mean, this was one paper, and I don't know that I need to go back and relook at it, but I got the idea that apparently the speed at which we comprehend audiobook speed is closely matches the speed in which we visually read. Go ahead.
I haven't heard of this. I'm not going to throw a fit about that because that doesn't seem true to me. I don't think
it doesn't seem true to me either.
That seems. I would have to look deep into. I would have a skeptic's eye with that, just based off everybody's experience ever. But I don't know that it's not true.
Right.
My gut tells me it's not, because even like when I do a lot of immersion reading now, and I read so much faster than even the fastest that I can listen. And I'm a pretty quick listener, as we all know. And I just read way faster. And I'm sure some people are the opposite. They absolutely are people who can listen really well and really fast, and they read really slowly. So I don't know about that.
Oh, no, the idea is that, like, the idea I got, maybe I misunderstood, so I should double check it. But the idea I got is that, like, if you listen to something at 1.5 speed and you're able to read at that comprehension level, you probably, and if you can't read at 2.2 times speed, then you probably can't visually read at 2 times speed. You know what I mean? Like, your level of vision is probably going to go about as high as your level of hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't agree, but I haven't read the study. I just think that study probably has bad methodology.
But you're saying the opposite, right? You're saying that you could visually read a lot faster than you can.
I'm saying listen. I personally can, but I'm saying that, like, I just think the experience varies a lot. I don't see that much correlation between the two, especially because they're processed differently in your brain. So
well, that's what they were. That was the interesting part of the study. So I need to go find that study and bring it out, because it was talking about how.
I'm sure you read it well, and you're representing it fine.
I hope so. I see. That's the thing. I always don't trust myself. I'm like, did I understand it? I think I understood it. So my understanding, one thing that they were saying that was interesting to me in that study is they were actually making a case for the part of our brain that processes information is actually quite the same for audiobooks as it is for visual reading. There's a different decoding system. So we have a visual decoding system, obviously, when we're reading visually, but when we're actually processing the story,
oh yeah, for sure,
it all occurs in the same part of the brain.
Sure.
I can read faster than I can listen and understand. When I try to on the 3 occasions I've tried to immersion read, I'm still waiting for the audio to catch up. But then when I turn it up, I'm like, I can't understand what's going on. So
it's been very good for Malazan for me, because I have to slow down for Malazan when I'm immersion reading, because Ralph Lister is just slower. So like I really focus on the word and keep up with him, and I feel like it really helps me, versus like if it's a less challenging book, I'm just tempted to skip forward and match the audiobook, or like wait for the audiobook to catch up.
Yeah, I cannot process Malazan by listening to it. I did immersion
I don't listen
read
to it at all without, like, I have to visualize. I'm really bad at names with just audio. I'm very, very bad at it, and I'm getting better. It is a skill. Like, it's not something you're inherently.
I have to do that, Kyle, with Blade itself. Every single time I listen in my car and they talk about something, mention someone's name, when I get home, I got to grab the physical copy and look. And I'm like, that's not what I thought he was saying at all.
You know, I've thought about this a lot, and I think so. My parents have used subtitles on their TVs since the day I was born, and so I really think that that has really impacted the way that I process like visual and audio things, because whenever I've seen TV, I've always matched it to seeing the visual of the words at the same time. And so I think for names, I've just naturally attached names at the same time as seeing words. And so because even if I meet like coworkers and they're like, my name is blah, 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 and I'm like, I don't know what that name was. But as soon as I see their name on the schedule, it's like, I'm good. And I just think that's a consistent thing for me. But I've been trying to work on it and get better at it. I listened to all of Elantris without looking at the book at all. And that almost worked. So I'm getting better.
I did that actually with Warbreaker, and I was able to do that a few years ago. So it really depends. For me, it just depends on so many different factors, whether I can comprehend an audiobook or not. Like some I just can't. And some
that's my biggest piece of advice, is that like, don't assume after you've tried 2 audiobooks that you don't like it. Like, you might not like it, and that's fine. But it just tilts me when somebody like reads or listens to one audiobook and they're just like, yeah, just like I couldn't pay attention. I guess just, I guess I'm just a natural physical reader. And I'm like, no, try more.
Yeah.
Give it, like, it could have been the narrator. It could have been that you were tired that week. People really underestimate how much being tired,
how many variables there are. Yeah. I mean, just like what the Black and Blue Collar reader is saying here, for me, it's like some audiobooks, it's like squirrel, and I just did not process anything I just listened to, even over just like 2 minutes. But then some audiobooks, I am hanging on to every single word, like Stoner. I hung out to every single word in Stoner. But yeah, it just really depends on so many things. So I agree, Kyle, don't give up on that. But you do read. Go ahead.
Audio. Bookborn doesn't do audio though, right?
No, she doesn't.
Mine's silent.
Once in a while.
That's why I was tossing the ball to you. So you could
first of all, immersion reading sounds like my absolute nightmare. I have never tried it, nor will I. And there is nothing Kyle or anyone else can say to make me immersion read. I don't want to do it.
I would never. I have no opinions on this.
Awful. So no, I won't be doing that.
I'm curious why you feel so strongly though. That's interesting.
So I think one of the things is like, I'm actually not someone who has a lot of background noise in general in my life. Like, well, I do now because I have children and it's horrible. But like when I people, my friends would listen to music all the time doing homework. Never. I never had something on in the background while doing homework. Like for me, when I focus, I just want to focus. And when I read, I will never listen to music or do anything like that when I read. So listening to an audiobook while reading feels that way to me. I know it's not the same, but it's just like, I just want to be in my own thing. Audiobooks, I don't read a lot of audiobooks. I don't really like it. I have found over being forced to listen to audiobooks since starting BookTube by pushy people like Kyle.
Not as pushy as you think that I am, regardless.
I found in general,
look at Alan's face.
I vastly prefer nonfiction
Don't give
on
me
audio.
that look.
I do much better with nonfiction on audio. Something that's like very neutral, feels more like a podcast, is not a narrative. So it's been helping. I've been doing some more nonfiction on audio, and I've actually found that I enjoy that. But in general, fantasy, I just don't prefer it. Like I've listened to some and it's just not my favorite. I get distracted really easily. In a nonfiction, you can space out for a couple sentences and it's not going to really do anything. The couple podcasts I listen to, same thing. So yeah, I don't know.
I only listened to nonfiction for the longest time. Also, I just have to respond to all this slander going on. This is why I knew Alan was going to be a problem. Like Alan and Derry over here calling me pushy. Listen, just because you gave me the biggest no
you
look.
Don't know what my expressions are.
Okay, regardless.
PJ is saying something too that's really me as well, which is my pace varies a lot while I read. Like my first experience reading Words of Radiance, this is a great example, but because of spoilers, I won't say where, but there was a chapter that I got to and like, I read it and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I went back and I read that page again. And then I read it again because it was like, it made me so happy that I have to read it again and again right then. And like with audio, it's a lot of work. Like you can't. And so like, I think someone else, sorry, this is the last thing I'll say about audiobooks. I also like to control my narrative. Like, recently I actually listened to Era 2 Mistborn on audio because I needed to re-listen before The Lost Metal came out. And I was like, hey, this is a perfect opportunity for me to try the audiobooks. I didn't like them, but I read, I did them anyway. And I realized the audiobook narrator's interpretation of tone of voice for a couple characters was vastly different than I had read it.
Interesting.
And particularly, actually, this is not a spoiler, so I can say this. People, when Era 2 first came out, had a problem with Marase and how she was portrayed. They said, like, oh, she's too, like, blushing. She's too weak. And I really disagreed with that. I was like, I didn't read her that way at all. And then I listened to the audiobook. And I was like, I feel like this audiobook narrator makes her sound that way. Makes her sound very, like, breathy and, like, kind of clueless. And all of a sudden I had this thought, like, I wonder if that's why people were having this differing experience, is because the audiobook narrator was interpreting something. And so I like to be in control of how I interpret a book. It might be wrong, but it's still the way I choose to internally narrate.
I enjoy it.
You want your own pronunciations.
And my own incorrect pronunciations. You better believe it.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing about, and I couldn't find the video where I saw Sanderson say this. So Hillary, next time you talk to Sanderson.
That's not going to happen. We'll pretend. Yes, let's pretend I can call him up anytime.
But I did listen to the audiobook of Warbreaker, and I really enjoyed it. I actually had a really fun time listening to that audiobook. And afterwards, I could have sworn I heard him say in a video that he wanted to get a new audiobook narration of that particular audiobook because he said that the person who narrated it didn't do one of the voices right. And that bothered me because I enjoyed it so much and I laughed and I thought it was great. And I thought, but did I hear it wrong? Did I get the wrong version because it wasn't what Sanderson intended? And so
the author.
Yeah.
I know he wants to.
I have found it. Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I know that he wants to redo it because the fans really like Michael Kramer, and I don't think Sanderson ever like gets out. Here's my problem with Sanderson, because I know that Alan's gonna.
Before we move on from audiobooks, can I say something about audiobooks before we move on to Sanderson?
Yes.
I found audiobooks work really well for rereading stuff because it doesn't matter if I miss it because I remember it. So I have really, really enjoyed re-listening to fantasy books on audio when I have to re-listen to them, because I can listen to them faster because even if I'm not understanding, like even if I don't catch everything, it doesn't matter. Like I don't have to catch everything. It really just jogs me. I'm like, oh, that's this part. That's right. That's this part. And Christina likes to say that I brought noise into her life because she, like you, never has background noise. I always have some kind of sound. I'm listening to BookTube music or BookTube videos while playing a video game with the sound up. And
I'm
being like, and being like, oh yeah, but to kill some monsters, all right. And she's like, why do you have to be so noisy? When her life, like before me, was like in the morning, get up, listen to the birds chirping.
That's what my wife is like.
And I'm like, Cat, what are y'all doing? Oh, y'all stop doing that.
That's like the difference between my husband and me too.
To metal music blasting in my ears while reading a book, and my wife's like, how can you do that? And I'm like, because it makes the voices in my head calm down. I don't know, like I just need a lot of stimulation.
Get some medicine.
That's so funny.
And
just to answer this question here, I've never read The Wheel of Time, and I don't know. I know that Bookborn does not listen to audiobooks, so she probably can't.
I do love Rosamund Pike though. Like she was my ideal Moraine. So like I haven't listened to it, but I'm curious. Like maybe for a reread, I'll try listening to it just because I've reread that book already a few times. So like Alan said, it's a lot easier for me to reread a book on audio because I'm not so like invested in how I feel about it. So I'll try it. I haven't tried it. I've heard she did a really good job though. So I don't know.
Kyle,
I'm rereading A Song of Ice and Fire right now, but I just can't do the audiobooks. I'm too scared. Because I've heard too many horrible things about it.
Oh, okay. They're bad.
That's what I've heard. I've heard they're really bad. And like the thing about Martin's writing is they're so immersive. They're so visual for me. And I could hear every voice in my head. And I just, like you, I think what you were saying, Bookborn, I just don't want an audiobook narrator to take that away from me, at least with that experience of that series.
Especially if it means a lot to you.
That's a good
want to
point,
keep,
because Roy Dotrice, like he just like Arya's like a 90-year-old drunken pirate, and I'm like, what are you
Ugh.
doing to Arya Stark? Like,
No.
leave her alone. So I definitely get that.
Sorry. An example of like the narrator reading something differently. When I was reading Philip's book, there's a part, and I'm so glad I talked to him beforehand, or the audiobook was going to be completely wrong because I read it completely wrong. There's a part where like someone names a sword. It's like, hey, give the sword a name, and the dude says the name, and I was like, that's a what? What is that name? And the guy says a good name. I thought because the name was weird that the guy was like, no, give it a good name. Like the name you picked sucked. Give it a good name. But Philip told me what it meant. I'm like, he told me what the word meant. And I'm like, oh, I bet he says, oh, that's a good name. I bet that's what he's saying. And it's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Philip, that I thought your sword name was because I was going to say a good name. Like,
Yeah.
and that completely changes the tone of what's happening in that scene. But I didn't know. I don't, Philip, if you're going to use weird words that aren't words I understand, you got to let me know, man.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Fun little anecdote.
I need to look up that name now.
Oh,
I know. I gotta read it. I have it. I have
You're
it sitting
probably
in my inbox. I haven't started it yet, though.
Oh, yay. Cool. Yeah, I should be
I'm gonna
finishing
read
it
it.
hopefully tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I'm thinking.
Oh, that's exciting. I know. I'm gonna be late to the party. Philip knows. He said it was okay. He was like, it's fine.
He's upset that you didn't get a review out because you have way more subs than I do. You're way better for the press tour.
Philip would never be using me. Philip and I are friends, okay, Alan? We mutually respect each other's research acumen, okay?
Y'all just hang out in the VIP lounge where they only let you in if you have more than 20K subs. And y'all sit here and talk about
Alan, the only one being elitist here is you. And you need to accept that.
How am I elitist? I am a man of the people. I'm trying to raise up.
You're the one who's concerned about it, and no one else is.
You know what? That's because I have to freaking find ways to eat. When you're sitting up there in the manor house, you don't have to worry about it.
You're also that was a bad example because you're the only one eating on this live.
That is because I had my cohorts steal from the storage bin the overflow from your feast. This is the unused part of the peacock.
Okay.
Don't tell me what I'm eating, Hillary. I am oppressed by you and yours.
Perfect.
I got an arc though, and I don't have 20K. But I'm an elf, so I'm an exception.
Yeah, but you're in the elite.
Oh, whatever.
Little club they have.
Here's the thing, Alan. Everyone is in the elite to Alan except himself. So that's what you need to know about Alan.
I'm somehow in the elite club, and I'm not in the.
Is their token sub 10K pleb that
the token sub
to show how of the people
charitable they are. I'm the charity case.
Yes.
Goodness.
Joanna, if you ever decide to cut ties, I'm on your side.
Oh, well. All right. we can buddy read Vinland Saga together. How about that?
I am not an elitist.
I love that got to you.
It does, because I am not an elitist. Just like when people say that I'm mean, I am not mean.
I've been sitting
You're
here for
not
half
mean.
an hour
Everyone just
mad
says that to tease you. You're definitely not mean.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have started my channel if not for Alan. So, yeah. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm so behind in the chat now. So I don't even know what people are talking about anymore. But I hope you all are having a good time in there.
It's okay, Alan. I've been trying to defend myself about being pushy for like 15 minutes, so I get being riled about.
Kyle, you're kind of pushy though.
I know, but I'm not. That's your interpretation of it. That's what I've been trying to explain.
Why do you get to decide if people think you're pushy?
Because I know what my intentions.
Sounds kind of pushy.
Oh, I mean, okay. So for most people, that's not going to matter. Intentions matter a lot to me. But a lot of people.
I know, but it's because it's through text. So people say if I have like an audiobook rant or whatever, people think that I'm just like, oh, well, you have to be. But I'm like, no. It's because I know how these processes work, and people just generally don't. And that doesn't mean that like you have to do audiobooks. Like, don't do them if you don't want to, but at least be armed with the information. Like a lot of people try them and then they're just.
I've been misrepresented too many times to not agree. I'm on your side with this one. Like, I come off the wrong way all the time.
Actually, that's a great, I mean, it's an interesting topic. When you're on YouTube, it's really hard to come off the way you mean. Because one disadvantage is that you're not actually a part of the conversation. Like you put something out there and then people respond to it. And so I know we're joking here, but it is something I've seen a lot. Like people can really misinterpret how you present things and books, and that's a wild thing. I don't know if you guys ever think about that. It's something I think about a lot. Being
That's
on
why
YouTube.
I do a lot of lives, Hillary,
Mhm.
like because I can
respond.
Yeah, because then I can be like, what? Oh, I didn't mean it like that. Sorry. Or
Yeah, like
Mhm.
I typically like nobody ever gets in fights with me, like verbally. Like it's always on Discord. People just think that I'm like throwing hands. I'm like I'm not.
Kyle is way more even keeled.
But I'm
like
even
in
keeled
person.
in text. It's just
You're-
that it's coming
but
across a different way. I
Your
know.
words do not. Your words
I
have an
know,
aggressive
Alan.
tone.
But that's because you're reading them aggressively. And it's
Everyone
hard-
is reading them
I-
aggressively.
Okay, but Alan,
But
it's a two-way street.
Linda,
It is a
Linda.
two-way street. It is a two-way street. I'm not saying that I don't need to work on how I interact through text. I do. But I'm also saying that people naturally view text more negatively. That is a research phenomenon.
Yeah.
So if especially on the internet where people are used to being like people are just always aggressive. So when you read a text, you're going to read it more aggressively because you assume that's how everybody's talking. So Discord is also my first time talking to people where I have recurring relationships with those people that don't know me personally. So I'm used to people just giving me the benefit of the doubt, knowing like the vibe that I'm giving off. And then I've just had to learn that like that's not going to come across on text as much. And once people know me, that usually comes across better. But then you have people like Alan that just, fight with me.
Sorry,
So then I
please
get all
excuse
fed
me.
up.
You're aggressive.
There are ways to soften your tone, though.
Yes,
I know. I've been trying to use
text.
emojis more because
So
everybody's
sorry,
like, use more emojis. And I'm like,
no,
yeah,
Say, so sorry. Please excuse me. You're wrong. Just like they do in Shogun.
I've literally never said that though.
So sorry. Please excuse me.
Just say so sorry. Please excuse me, and then they'll forgive you. They'll be like, okay. Try it.
That
say
is
something
so
super
funny.
confrontational. Say, so sorry, please excuse me, but your favorite book sucks. And they'll be like, oh, you know what, Kyle, thanks. I appreciate
Yeah, but I don't ever say people's favorite book sucks. Usually when people get mad, I'm just like, oh, well, why did you like this? And then they just take that as
I can no longer post my thoughts about Way of Kings in my own Discord because everyone is really hostile. Like, I'm just posting thoughts.
That was me.
Well,
I was joking with you, and then I think other people were too, and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop because...
Hillary, explain it. You're
Explain
the number
what?
one fan. You've been in the freaking Bat Cave.
I haven't been in your Way of Kings Discord, though.
It's not the
Discord
Bat Cave. That's the
me.
freaking corner where there's a burning trash can to keep warm. It's not the war room and your huge table where you move like figures around with a little stick.
Is the war room my YouTube comment section, which is wild? Is that the war room?
I'm talking about the huge freaking like castle room that you went to. It's Sanderson's house.
Oh. Well, that's just super fans, though. There's no trash burning there. We just all liked the book.
No, I know. I'm trying. Why did Kyle leave?
I don't know.
I
don't know what happened to Kyle.
No, I'm trying to get you as the super fan to explain to me why people are hostile to me when I post my Way of Kings talk.
Oh, because every fandom's hostile.
Okay.
That's the thing is, again, one of my huge goals on YouTube, which isn't, anyway, I don't need to talk more about this, but like, there are times where I have done mild phrasing. Here's an example, Rings of Power. My title was Rings of Power was disappointing. And people were really angry at that. They were angry that I wasn't saying it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. They were angry. And my response was, look, I would have gotten more views if I had titled it better. But I refuse, because I refuse to be that kind of person in this fandom who is so reactive. But the problem is fandoms are just reactive. So someone sees that you don't like Way of Kings. I know that's not necessarily what you're saying right now. I know you're just in it, but you don't like something about Way of Kings. And immediately people take this as a personal attack. You don't like Way of Kings, Alan, then you don't like me.
No,
okay?
I said Sin was annoying. And oh my gosh.
Who did you say was annoying?
Syl. Sorry, Syl.
Oh, Syl. Yeah, so you say Syl is annoying.
I'm not surprised.
You say Syl is annoying.
In chapter
now,
up to chapter 8.
Like and now, Alan, you're telling the person who loves Syl that they're annoying. Like that's what happens. People tie it to their identity. so strongly. And it's like, you just have to take a step back and be like, someone can dislike your favorite book and it's not a reflection on you. It's not even a reflection on the author. It just is. Like, look, Leanna from Leanna's Library and I are like super great friends. She like hates 90% of what Sanderson writes.
She hates 90% of anything anybody writes.
Well, okay, but it's like, I don't think Leanna hates me because she doesn't like, Warbreaker. And what?
No,
she hates me.
She does hate you, but go ahead. She hates everybody.
She doesn't hate me though. That's the secret. She hates everybody, but she doesn't hate me. Where's Leanna so she can defend me on this? Yes, and so Evie's getting the point. Like, one of my most frustrating things being on YouTube is my irrational desire to try to bring rationality to the internet, and no one clicks on it. And then they accuse me, if I say something negative, of you only talk about negative things. Just if you talked about positive things, you'd get more clicks. And it's like, no, actually.
No, you will
not.
No,
if I made my channel 100% rants, I'd have so many more subscribers. And those are the same people being like, you shouldn't be so negative, but they're clicking on it. And it's just, anyway. I've overtaken this conversation and I'm so sorry.
No. I think I totally agree with you. And I think it's really too bad. And it's really interesting too, though, like why people get their identities wrapped up in these fandoms. And I feel like it happens maybe more in fantasy. Well, I mean, in fantasy, we have the fandom. I mean, that's, I think, what's the word? That's unique to fantasy, right? And sci-fi, maybe.
Yeah, I think I don't know, there's other like romance, I feel like has a pretty big tight-knit group. Oh, why are we losing everybody now?
I don't know.
Is Kyle coming back?
Are you
Alan's back?
Go ahead, continue.
Okay.
Just us two now. Look at us. But I do think there's really intense fans. And one of the reasons, I mean, I have part of this. A lot of fantasy can help you through some really difficult times in ways that nonfiction might not necessarily hit in the same way. Do you know what I mean? Or even sometimes regular fiction. Let's get vulnerable on the internet for a second. So like, Harry Potter was like my personality as a child. People would back me up on this. And it helped me through a lot of stuff. Like, that was the book I went to. And so now that series has come under a lot of fire, I have had to try to step back and be like, this is not a reflection like on me as a person. And I think that one was harder for me to separate because it was entwined with my childhood and like my formative years. Whereas like now as an adult, my identity isn't quite as tied up. Not that what I read doesn't affect me. It definitely does. But it's like my identity is more formed. I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you feel like...
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if it's in your formative years, there is going to be an extra connection there. And I think that the other thing too, the reason we have fandoms with fantasy, and maybe it's more unique to the genre, not only is it just the character-driven part, because you can find a lot of fiction where there's a lot of in-depth characters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think it's also the series phenomenon. Don't you think? That
you're
we're following a journey.
Yes. I say that all the time. You're with them for so many more pages.
Yeah.
And so it feels, and Harry Potter I always bring up as very unique. One of the only YA series that I know of that starts middle grade and goes YA. And I'm in my 30s. So I was actually Harry's age for a lot of the books being released. And so that was so formative. Like, I grew up with Harry. I grew up with Hermione. So I internalized it a lot more, I think, than I internalize things today. And so, I do think that conversation is super interesting. A lot of the conversations, like, it's just a book series. Like, you shouldn't care about cutting it off. And it was like, well, but for some of us, it doesn't feel that way. Like, and because there have been authors I stopped supporting all the time. And, just to be clear, not on J.K. Rowling's side here. Like, I just cannot stand anything she says. I just try to forget. But the idea of like, well, you can never read that again. Like, I think people underestimate how formative some of those reads can really be to your identity. And I just think it's an interesting conversation. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. And I just don't fault anybody for loving Harry Potter because of that. I think that the characters they live inside of you, like you build
Mhm.
a relationship with them over time. It is part of you, and more so than it feels even part of the author anymore. So I think that everybody has a right to that.
And less controversially, like I think, can you think of like the first book you cried to? Like I can think of the first book I cried to, and that book is like forever seared in my heart. Do you know which book
Yeah.
it was? I'm just
I
curious.
think for me, I think the where the red fern grows, I remember
Classic.
that. Was
That's just
that
a
it for you?
classic one you cried. No, it's not
Yeah.
mine,
Oh,
but it's a
okay.
classic one. I didn't
Yeah.
read it because I heard what happened at the end. That's not a spoiler anymore, right? The dog dies, and I
Yeah.
was like, no thanks. I've never
Yeah.
read it.
I don't know if I really cried. I just remember I was like trying to hold back the tears and like, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. Yeah, but I think that was probably the closest.
And you'll
Nowadays, I cry
remember
all
it.
the time because I'm just like so sentimental. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't cry a lot in general, but yeah, I still remember. And that lives on. Like and it's so if someone were to trash that book, I'd be like, well, that was a part. That book was a part of my experience. And so anyway, I just think that phenomenon is really interesting, but also trying to remove yourself from it to not become so attached that you can't handle any criticism against it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you were talking about how Harry Potter was a part of you. Did you feel like you connected to him more or Hermione because she was a female
Oh,
character or
definitely Hermione. Like
yeah.
and it's so interesting to hear so many girls who are my age just connect to her on such a fundamental level. People try to be like, "Oh, Hermione, what a classic answer." I'm like, "Here's the truth. Girls just like I don't know if we weren't having that representation in fantasy or we weren't reading that, but just like every girl I knew just attached to her so much." And
Yeah.
that's I think my first character. That's the first character I ever was like, oh, that's me. Like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my funny story to tell with this is my sister and dad actually read it first before I did. And my dad actually was like, Hillary, you've got to read this series. There's this girl in it who's a bossy know-it-all. She is just like you. And so it was like, it wasn't even just me. It was like my family was like, wow, you are just like this girl. And yeah, that was like a formative experience to read about. And I think I don't know, did you grow up with Harry Potter or
Well, I'll show my age here. I was a bit older when the series
Mhm.
came out, so I actually read it when I was in college,
Okay.
but I loved it. And at the time,
Mhm.
I had a college professor who was an incredible academic and scholar, and he loved the series. He had no shame. He's like, "It's well written. I enjoy it." And my best friend, who actually was an avid fantasy reader, she loved the series, and so I didn't have any shame getting into it as an older person,
No,
but
I
I
don't think
loved
there's
it.
any shame. It's
Yeah.
fun. I read out loud to my 8-year-old a lot now, and it's fun getting to experience like new middle grade stuff with him because like some of it's really good. Like I might
Yeah.
not pick it up on my own, but then I'm like, oh, this stuff is really good. Like
I sometimes get the itch to pick up more middle grade, like the Keeper of the Lost City series.
I've
Like
heard
that
so much about
looks
that
so
one.
fun. It just looks
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, it's
But I'm curious about that too, because you've done some really, really good videos on female characters in fantasy, and you did one recently on the fridging trope.
Mhm.
Did you find like after Harry Potter, especially with adult fantasy, I guess nowadays we have a lot more representation of female characters, but I
Mhm.
know that for me, growing up when I did, that was kind of a struggle. And I'm sure there were books at the time that I just wasn't picking up that had really great female representation, but it just felt like even now, I just feel like when we talk about a lot of older fantasy, it feels like it's still pretty male dominated. I feel like Malazan's actually pretty different in that regard. But
Yeah,
do you
it
find that to
is.
be the case?
Yeah, and it's interesting because as a kid, I don't think I ever framed it in those terms, right? I didn't have the term female representation. Like
Right.
that wasn't a term. And I also went through a huge tomboy stage. I was the only girl in my calculus class. So I had a lot of internalized like I like boy things. And so I think that also influences how I interacted with like fantasy as a kid. So it's hard for me to really know how I did. But now, you know, what you said earlier about YA is absolutely true. I did the numbers. I looked up the top 100 selling books in YA and fantasy over several lists. And then I calculated the percentage of female versus male authors in those categories. And YA, the top 100 over a few lists. So it ended up being like 110 books. It was something like 94% of the YA books were written by females, and then 77%, 76%, it was around there. I don't remember the exact, of adult fantasy is written by men.
Wow.
And so that dichotomy is absolutely there. There is this idea that if a female character is central, then you are YA. If a male character is central, then you are adult. And, or if you're a female author. Actually, female authors just tend, even if they have a male main character, to get pushed into YA. I have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, I wonder about that too, especially with the coming of age trope, which is something I love. I love a coming of age story.
Me too.
But I feel like if it's a female coming of age story, it's almost automatically YA. And if it's a male coming of age story, then a lot of times it'll lean adult. And it also makes me wonder, about our concepts of gender identity and culture, and whether we have this idea that the male gender should grow up faster. That's something that came to my mind.
Interesting. Great point.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of factors. I've thought about this a lot. I really want to do a video on stuff like this. It's just, there's so much research. This is when I need like 2 months to dig into it. But stuff that I have seen that I'm curious about. PJ brought up one. Publishers. Publishers have it in their head that more females read YA and more males read adult, whether it's true or not. So I think a large portion of the split is just publishers. So I totally agree that that is a portion of it. You know, people just have the assumption that adult fantasy is male dominated, so they want to read about that. A fabulous book I'd recommend to everybody, it's a nonfiction, is Invisible Women. Invisible Women, Data in a World Designed for Men, or something like that. Have you read it?
One. I have it on my to-read list. I still need to get to that. Yeah.
It's so good. But one thing, a quote that was said in that book that will live on with me forever is, the male perspective is seen as universal and the female perspective is seen as niche, despite the fact that females make up 50% of our population.
Wow.
And it's just such a powerful statement. And so there's this idea that, like, well, if there's a female main character, then it's for girls. And if there's a male main character, then it's for everyone. And this perception is so annoying. Oh gosh, I could talk about that for ages. But I'm going to try to hold back. So I think that's a huge part of it. This idea that, well, men can't read about women and identify with them. That's silly. But a woman can read about a man and identify with a male character. And obviously both of those are, like, it's untrue, right? Of course a man could identify with a female character, but there's always this surprise when they do, like, wow. And it's like, of course you can. like of course.
I know. Yeah.
And that's not, and I'm not trying to like criticize men. I think they have been socialized to believe that.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. I think you bring up a super interesting point about our expectations for how men need to grow up, be a man. And, you know, I wish more men understood that feminism is trying to fight that as well. Like, no, you shouldn't have to man up. You shouldn't have to like not cry. Like, anyway, we're off topic. I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm so passionate about the topic.
It's something that's been on my mind. I'm going to be talking about this in a wrap up soon, but I recently read a book. It's actually a Malazan book by Ian C. Esselmont. And there's in the book, we follow two perspectives. One is a young teenage female character, and one is a grizzled old battle-weary veteran. And the battle-weary veteran is a male. The young teen character is a female, and the teen character is one of those who just wants to get out there, wants to like be in the action, wants to get off the island, wants to be part of things. And I didn't know until I finished the book. And actually, hope you don't mind, Alan, me bringing you up. But I was like, I liked Kiska. I liked this younger female character in this story, or having a vehicle for that. And Alan was like, that is a super unpopular opinion, Joanna. And I was like, what? And so I went on Goodreads. And I mean, to be fair, it's not the most, okay, if I look really, really critically, yes. I mean, there's room for more fleshing out. And there was one scene I thought was kind of weird with that character. But when I went on Goodreads, I could not believe the amount of hatred this character got. Like, people hated her. I mean, just hated her. And I get some criticisms of that character. I don't think she deserved the amount of hatred that she received. And part of me is wondering, what if not, I hesitate to, I probably should have, I kind of hesitate to say this, but what if Ian C. Esselmont had flipped it? What if he had made the young teenage character male? And what if he made the grizzled
I
what?
would still hate him. I would still hate him. Because guess
Go
what?
ahead.
He's still annoying. He's still annoying because he's a teenager.
Joanna, this is the thing. I think that's a super interesting point, and the thing is, we'll never know. And that's why it's really hard to talk about these things, because people can get so heated about it. And it's like, I'm not trying to make a definitive statement, and you're not trying to make a definitive statement. You just thought, I wonder how the perception would change of this character if their gender was flipped. And I think, have you read Anxious People?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a book that really deals with that well, in my opinion. I was personally very surprised by a reveal in that book. And I realized that I had maybe been putting some gender assumptions on some characters that I should not have.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about.
And it was like, oh, here's me being like, I'm so enlightened. But no, we all do it. I think that's my point being, is like, we all do it, and we're all never going to know to what extent. And it's just something you can't answer. But I still think
wouldn't the thing that annoyed you have to be something that is, stereotypically male or stereotypically female? Like, isn't annoying like genderless? Like, annoying teenagers, they are both annoying.
No. In fact, there's proof that like things teenage girls like are considered more annoying, more stupid. You know what? If you want a great video essay on this, Lindsay Ellis has a video, and I think it's called something like "I'm Sorry, Stephanie Meyer" or something like that. It has something to do with Twilight in the title.
My teenage boys are way more annoying than the girls.
Oh, they absolutely are. I'm talking about in fiction, though. And she talks about in that book, or in that thing, about how harsh we were on Twilight, and how harsh society tends to be on things that teenage girls gravitate towards, and how less harsh. Well, I don't think Twilight is good. You should watch the video, though. It's not about whether it's good or not. It's about like Alan. Here's a good example. You have like boy bands or like stupid girl movies, quote unquote. And they're so stupid. But then you have 30 Fast and Furious movies.
Also stupid.
And I agree that they're also stupid, but society is not as hard on men who love Fast and Furious as they are on women who like boy bands.
I agree. No, but society's wrong. They're dumb. Society
is wrong, but it's society. So, Alan, we have to deal with the society.
I'm trying to fix it down here from the bottom. You're the one like feasting off of its rewards.
I'm trying to fix it. That's like all my videos are about, Alan. Is like how
we have to see it though in order to fix it.
The problem, Hillary, is that you've become one of them. So your videos, they're falling on deaf ears. You have to fix it from the bottom.
Who have I become? You go talk to my commenters, because they're terrible to me. So you go comment and tell them that I'm one of them, and tell me how that works.
It's lonely at the top. It's lonely at the top.
You know what, Alan? I wish I was at the top as much as you said I was. I wish. Yeah, send me right there. You help me get there.
Give it time. You'll be there.
What is going to happen when you're at the top, Alan? When you reach
I'm at the top? You mean 4 subscribers at a time? Yes, in the year 3,143, when I have finally capped like 10,000 subscribers, I will never be at the top. And if I was at the top, I would be benevolent. And I would pay it forward back to a community that bore me.
Hey, Alan, did you get something in the mail from me recently?
I did not. Did you send me something?
Oh, I did.
Oh,
That would be in a perfect moment right now when you talking about giving back to the community. Like, you know how I sent you a cool gift because you helped me out with this interview or whatever. I'm
Oh
sorry,
yeah,
it's not there yet.
that's your photo op. Like you gotta take like 2 pictures of those like a year so you can stay. No, I appreciate that. I forgot to send me that. I haven't gotten it yet. I
Oh, you
appreciate
haven't gotten it yet. That's so annoying. The mail is so slow. Anyway,
it. Well, you live literally diagonally across the
I
country
know.
from me,
It's
like
so
as
far.
far as it's possible and be in the continental United States.
Yeah, Joanne,
I'm
I think that's a
sorry.
super
I'm so sorry,
interesting
Hillary.
question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, I was going to say, I'm sorry I took this from you. I think you bring up a super interesting point. Something else I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe is I do think some women, I've heard this a lot. So this is all like just from conversations I have personally had in my own feelings. So it's not like a blanket statement, but a lot of women have problems with how prevalent sexual assault is against women in adult fantasy. And I think that is another thing that pushes women to YA more because it is way less frequent there. And I know that held me back for a long time from making the jump between YA and adults. And I think that's an interesting element to bring into the discussion.
That is a really interesting element. And I do wonder about that, like why that gets explored so heavily in adult fantasy. And I'm not against it being explored. I think it could bring up good, interesting conversations.
So Jimmy and I,
but I wonder why.
We're talking about why. It's because it's an impetus. It's an impetus for look at what they're experiencing. Let's see them rebound and how they deal with this particular situation. And Jimmy and I were talking about this in that people think that just because a book is dark, it is the only way you can explore the human condition is through these horrible things happening and this darkness. And so people have, we are conflating, especially recently on BookTube. I've seen a lot of, I've seen a good amount of this where the word dark is being conflated with the word good, as if those are the same adjectives. Like if it is dark, it is therefore good. No, like I don't grope around in the good to find my glasses before turning the light on, right? Like they're not the same word. But it's because, and it's always, you always hear like, oh, I just love like what it does to the characters, character exploration. Like there is, for Stoner, for example, like to bring back John Williams, nothing happens in that book. No great trauma. It's just a schlub of a mediocre English teacher going through stuff that, early 20th century middle-aged English teacher schlubs go through. And yet it is such a profound character study when he is trying to prevent someone from getting through the graduate program through cheating. We learn so much about everyone's character in that room. And guess what? No one's been sexually assaulted. No one lost a limb. No one is like bleeding and like bleeding out. And I think we just give too much weight to these. Like that's the only way you can explore like the human condition. When like you want to explore. Okay, so for example, exploring the helplessness one feels if they're disabled in some way, and so like you cut off, like you just like completely maim them. Let me explain to you something. The helplessness I have felt in the last 2 months, not being able to do the things that I normally do, and I'm in a wheelchair. I used to be able to do everything for myself, and I am independent. The helplessness I feel, I'm sorry, that is more compelling to me for me to read about than, oh look, it's another person who freaking lost his legs in the war. We don't always have to go bigger and harder and better. Just be like, oh, just look at how they deal with it. Everyday trauma is hard enough. Like the stuff we deal with every day, that shows character like enough. We don't, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I think we reach for that too much because it's not interesting. And I mean, I disagree. Anyway, that's my thought on that.
Alan, preach.
Yeah.
Preach.
Everybody read Stoner.
Preach. Yes, like it's not bad. I've read good books who explore those intense traumas. I have. But so many people are reaching for them, especially with this rise of like the idea of grimdark or morally gray, as if you have to have the utmost trauma. I got in tons of trouble once for calling a book The Trauma Olympics because I felt like all of this author was trying to do was how much trauma can I place on my character, but literally did not deal with it. I was like, look, if you're going to put that on your character. Like, you have to deal with it. You can't just be like, it's fine now. I just agree. Like, there are little things in our lives like that you can explore those same themes to. It doesn't always have to be, how can this be more violent? How can it be more intense? Anyway.
And I don't know.
That is so true. I agree with all
of that.
that.
Women have other problems to deal with other than being assaulted. Like, there are a lot of problems that women can deal with.
Like, it is a real thing, right? It's a real thing. Like, Joanna, you and I, like, we are always thinking we can't be out at night. Don't wear a ponytail because someone could grab it.
1 in 4 on a college campus. 1 in 4.
Yeah.
So it's not that it doesn't happen, but the way that it's often written in fantasy as it's the only bad thing that could happen to you is where it gets like annoying.
Because a lot of the problems that women are dealing with are the same problems that men are dealing with. Like, you don't have to how about you just give them the same problems that the guy's dealing with? Because they're dealing with the same crap. It's human stuff. Like, people problems. We humans have a lot of the similar issues, like male and female.
Well, and there's also this whole idea of, well, it's historical. Like,
yes,
in that
I
time
hear that all
period.
The time.
And it's like, well, if you really looked into the history, you'd find that men were actually getting assaulted quite frequently in war as well as women. But
especially
somehow women.
Yeah.
What?
On ships, cabin boys.
Yes.
Because the sailors are at sea so long, like prepubescent teens would be like cabin. That was a rite of passage you did. If you were a cabin boy on the ship, you wanted to graduate to being a seaman and then a captain or whatever. You did your time as the cabin boy for the men who don't have any women with them for long voyages at sea.
But male fantasy authors aren't almost never writing about that. They're just writing. So I think it's also interesting when they're like, well, it's historical. And I'm like, well, if you really want to play that card, let's play that card then. Not that I want to see that either. So I'm not like being like, let's do it. Cause like I really have a hard time reading that. In
Charmaine, I agree also.
But
I'll go to Charmaine's comment. Good characters are unrealistic. Dark or morally gray characters are not the only type of people that exists. There are people who do want to be.
I would consider myself a morally good character, but
I think we all hope that we're morally good. I guess not everybody.
Most of y'all are bad.
We aren't, but morally good doesn't mean. I think people are like, oh, you're good. You've never done something wrong. It's like, no, that's not what it is. Anyway, preach.
Yeah. Can you remind me, Hillary, what your the main premise of the morally gray characters video you did? Because I did watch it. I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, all I basically said was people are acting like morally gray characters are a new thing. They've literally been around since the dawn of time. We are just conflating morally gray with grimdark. We think morally gray characters have to be like violent and destructive instead of just characters who maybe do a little bit too much bad to be considered good or use the wrong methods.
Questionable decisions or getting it wrong. Like getting it wrong is like.
I mean, what I talk about is like Han Solo by definition is morally gray.
I mean, couldn't Gollum be morally gray? In a way, couldn't Gollum be morally gray to some extent?
I mean,
Gollum.
Absolutely. He's more like, I would say, villain with a tragic backstory. So I talk about that too.
Tragic backstory.
Yeah, we love a villain with a tragic backstory. I talk about that in that video. But I just talked about how like this idea, and I think it goes with this, is like, well, people have to be violent. I'm like, Han Solo was pretty tame when we consider nowadays, but he was still morally gray. He was the smuggler. He didn't want to help the rebellion. He said, it's all for me, not for other people. Like that's kind of the definition of morally gray, that you don't care about other people, just yourself.
Yeah.
But now if it's not like intense or violent or grim in every way, if the story is hopeful, we feel like characters can't be more. That's not true. I mean, just even think of like Lord of the Rings, like Boromir. Like Boromir is a kind of complicated character, and Lord of the Rings is upheld as like the classic like good versus evil fantasy, and there were still characters in there. Like you said, Gollum has this tragic backstory that wasn't just like cut and dry. So I just think we overstate it.
Hillary, can I say something real quick? I'm gonna.
Oh no.
Because you guys didn't see it, and I'm not. Christina's in the other room saying, "Don't." I am not kidding. So I've read Lord of the Rings once in 7th grade, and I've seen the movies one time, and it's when they came out in the theaters. until Sunday night when I was told how incorrect I was, because I just said this out loud. I thought, and I'm not kidding, I thought that Boromir steals the ring, runs away. The Fellowship chases him. They corner him on the riverbank, and Legolas kills him to get the ring back. And I'm not kidding. I literally thought that the Fellowship cannibalized its own, and then at the very end, when he's dying, he apologizes. But he died a traitor's death. That is literally what I still couldn't believe that I was wrong when Christina ran in from the other room being like, what? I swear, I distinctly remember him stealing the ring. They corner him on the riverbank, and he won't give it back, but they've trapped him, and Legolas has to shoot him.
Nope.
That is
wow.
That is what
memory is so unreliable, isn't it?
That's so funny because like Boromir's story is so tragic because he does try to steal the ring, but then ultimately dies.
Everyone always says that, and I'm like, yes, it is tragic. He's gunned down like a common dog.
Goodness.
That's what I thought. I swear. That is what I have believed for 20 years, and I have been told I was wrong.
Well, no wonder you don't like Lord of the Rings.
No, I thought that was awesome. Now they took that awesome thing away from me.
Yeah, I think, I just think our perceptions on that are a little skewed based on everything everyone said here.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, though, about Lord of the Rings, though, because that does get brought up all the time. Like, that is the definition of grimdark. The antithesis of Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, but Lord of the Rings is like so much more nuanced.
And someone brought it up here. I can't remember who brought it up. The comments are going so fast, but someone talked about the Silmarillion. And like, the Silmarillion is dark, dude. Like, I was reading the Silmarillion and was like, holy moly, Tolkien. Like, I did not expect this to be what we're going here. So it's interesting.
I would never.
Thank you. And thank you, by the way, Michael. That's so sweet of you. Yeah. Sorry, I am like so behind on the comments right now. I appreciate stories that deal with really heavy themes and yet still have hope and redemption alongside those things. Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely. I was asked recently, I think Murphy asked in the last episode, like why I like such dark stories. Because I gravitate towards a lot of dark content lately. And it wasn't really a conscious choice, honestly, but it really is because I think this is probably why a lot of people tend to like darker content is they want, but at least for me, I feel like sometimes if the dark is dark, then the light is lighter, the chiaroscuro effect. And so I do love hope in stories. I think that is something I personally connect to as well. Yeah. And have you read Guns of the Dawn, by the way, Hillary? By Tchaikovsky?
The name Guns is in the title, so it's going to be like low on my list. You know what I mean?
No, that's how I'm not really a guns and fantasy type of person. That's actually a huge buzzkill word for me. But I did love the book, and I really strongly liked it. And then now I can't stop shouting it out and thinking about it. So it's one of those books that I like it. It's one that I like more and more over time. And I've been like trying to get Tori to read it too. Although I know that Alan has also tried to get her to read it. Yeah.
Did you drink my coffee?
And Alan is the one who got me to read that. So
that's right.
Yay, Alan. But I think you would like it. I actually think you would like it. And it's a good standalone.
Yes, because you were able to get through Shadow Campaigns and enjoyed it despite all the.
Well, I got through book 1 of Shadow.
That's what I mean. 1,000 names. And
I really did enjoy it. The battles were tough, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm sure I can avoid.
So there are fewer battles in Guns of the Dawn.
Right.
And so if you liked, the other stuff, the themes it tackles are really good, and really, really good female protagonists.
I just think like it ended in one of the most satisfying ways. Like I just love the way it came together. I love the way it came together.
Emily Marshwick is still one of my top characters. Emily Marshwick's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
I kind of want to reread it. I might have to listen to the audiobook so I can reread it. Yeah. Definitely. I think you would like it though. I have a strong feeling you would like it too, Hillary. I keep telling people that.
I trust you guys.
Hillary's too busy reading Malazan. She's never gonna read anything else.
Well, actually, the real thing is this year I'm trying so hard to finish. I have 18 books on my shelf that I bought and haven't read. Like they've either been sent to me or like I have them. 18 books, and I'm just like so determined this year to read those 18 books and not buy more books. other than Malazan, which I promised Kyle that we would try to read this year.
And The Secret Project.
And what?
And The Secret Project.
Well, I already bought those. Those count as bought books.
Which you'll read in a day. You'll read in a day.
I can read them in a day.
So why are you worried about people spoiling Sanderson for you? Because
I don't worry about it anymore because I read them all in a day so that I can get a video out on them. Like that's
you really read them in a day?
Yes, she reads them in a day, Joanna, and it's ludicrous.
The grim, dark reality I live in.
I wish I could do that.
I am a slave to the algorithm because Sanderson videos are my only reliable way of getting subscribers.
Hillary, you just said that you're trying to change it, and then said you're slave to the algorithm. How can you change? How can you change society and the culture while still being a slave to the algorithm?
Here's how. Because like 90% of my videos don't get views at all. And so then every once in a while I do a video that gets views to try to hopefully get people to watch my videos that no one cares about. My favorite video I've ever created, like literally is one of my least viewed videos.
That's the way it is,
fine. I made it for myself. And that's fine. Most of the videos I make. I actually enjoy making Sanderson content because I love Sanderson. But yes, the one thing is I do read it in a day. So like Zach has stayed home before. So like I could read it. Like he's like been like, I'll take care of the kids. You go read the book. Yeah. With Lost Metal, he was actually out of town. Luckily, my daughter was in preschool. And I'm in PST, so I could read it the night before starting at 9 p.m. because it like releases at midnight. So I like read for a couple hours the night before. Sanderson always releases about 25% of the book before the book comes out. So I make sure I've read all the preview chapters. I read the night before, and then like that leaves about 50% of the book usually in one day to read.
Wow.
See, Joanna, this is why it can never change from the top. They're slaves to the algorithm. It will only change from the bottom. Me and my rabble, we refuse to bow at the dark altar of algorithm.
I mean, the funny thing is though, Alan, is like your videos probably per video get more views than mine. You have like a really dedicated fan base who watches all of your stuff because you are
army. That's because they're ready to overthrow and eat people like you.
I saw that your review for Philip's book keeps coming up in my feed, and it's like showing like thousands and thousands of views.
That's because
like Alan, I think you underestimate like you like to joke all the time, Alan, but here's the deal. You are an interesting person and people can watch you talk about anything. Like, it's no, I'm being sincerely complimentary. Like,
I agree.
You talk about anything. So that's why you have people come and watch and you have like a very dedicated fan base. Mine, like my fan base is only like what I can give them. So like, they don't like, I'm not funny enough. So people are going to watch anything I produce. Like it has to be entertaining. So yes, in some ways I am a slave to that because that is the kind of like channel I've created. And like, I think everyone likes to pretend on here that they don't want to grow and they don't want to be successful because there's something bad about that. I will come out and say, I want to grow. I do. I want to. I do. Okay. Like, I'm not going to pretend like, oh, I don't care. I do care. And I will.
Thank you for being honest about that. Because you're right. Everyone freaking does. And the people out there hemming and hawing, being like, oh, no, get out of here. Yes, you do. Like, yes, you do.
I mean, some people I think don't. Some people are like, this fine. But this is a hobby. I'm not making money from it. So the only thing I get joy out of is if like I grow. Like, and so yes, I am trying things to try to get people.
That makes me sad that you're savage. You're ungrateful subscribers like only come out for
I have a core of subscribers that I am extremely grateful for and I love them dearly. I do think that people who tend to be more successful on YouTube or have YouTube personalities.
That's true.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so Alan, you're really lucky that you are funny and you have a personality that is entertaining.
You're the data well-researched video essay person.
Yeah,
I'm Alan's mad about this particular thing. Let's watch him grumble about how freaking, Conan's not new tonight or whatever.
Where do you fall on this? Do you feel like you don't care? Do you want to grow?
I do want to grow. I do think that personality is a big thing on BookTube. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that we love fantasy and fantasy is so character driven that I feel like we're sticking around for channels the same way we stick around for a series. Bye Evie. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, I do want to grow. And I do feel conflicted about that because I don't want
to give up.
I don't know. I struggle. Well, sure. The identity crisis is real, but no, I think it's also, like being the slave to the algorithms sort of idea. I do get kind of nervous about that. Looking at numbers and stuff like that. I do think you can grow an unhealthy relationship with looking at that number count all the time. And for me, I know that you're really into stats, and I think that's really cool. And that's something I would love to probably explore a bit more. For me, I've always been more into qualitative research. So I'm more into like the how and why questions. So I try to focus my energy there because I feel like that's where I know I can make a difference. Because I don't have a personality like Alan's. So I don't feel like I can really.
Have to make do.
Yeah, you have to do with what you can. Go ahead, Alan. What?
I'm just saying, thank goodness there's not more than one of me. Like I
No.
feel like everyone can barely tolerate this one.
No, we're jealous. We're jealous because you have the right personality that everyone wants to watch.
And anyway, talking honestly, I'm not better than anybody because I don't look at my analytics tab. I don't look at it because it stresses me out. I don't care. But I do care about what does well. Like I want videos to do well also because I too want to grow. You know, again, let's be honest about it. But the problem is like even though there are things I can do, I can't make myself do them. I can't. Every time I'm like, what if I did this thing? I bet this thing would be really popular. Algorithm hunt. I can't do it. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with people who do that. But I physically can't because it's so counter to my revolutionary persona that I've created that I'm just like, well, my troops will mutiny and then they'll hang me up in the street like Mussolini.
But Alan, I agree. For me though, it's just I'm stubborn. Zach will be like, hey, you should do this thing. It's really successful on other channels. And I'm like, but I don't want to. I'm not interested in doing that. And he's like, who cares if you're interested? I'm like, I care. I can't sit down and film a video that
we have an accord, Hillary. This is why I'll never let my rabble eat you.
Thank you. Thank you for
I think I was going to say, I think you're really lucky though. Both of you are very lucky in that what you're doing that's popular meshes with who you are authentically. So Alan, you just naturally have this amazing personality that everybody loves and is a loyalist to. I mean, I've said that before you popped on here. I was like, when I discovered your channel, I binge watched actually all of Alan's videos. I had never done that before to a booktuber. I was like, this guy is so funny and I want him to be my history teacher. And I just kept watching all his videos. And Hillary, I think the thing that works for you is that you are genuinely curious and interested in these topics that you're doing video essays on. And so that's really working for you. And you're genuinely part of the fandoms that you're involved in. And I think for me, there have been times where I thought, this would be really good clickbait, but I can't do it because it feels like I'm doing something out of being clickbaity. And I don't really, and this is why my channel, I don't know. I don't even know if this is fair to say, but okay, I'll put it this way. When I started my channel in the beginning of 2021. And this is going to be so awful to say this with Bookborn on my channel right now, but I was going through the biggest Sanderson burnout ever.
What's wrong with that?
because you're a big Sanderson
fan.
I
think what you have to understand is that though people I've been a fan for something 11 years now. So you have to understand the amount of books that were out when I was reading was so much fewer. So I think it's unfair to compare because I was reading them as they came out every other year. I wasn't sitting there and trying to read his entire book catalog.
That was me. I did that in 1.5 years.
I don't think that's strange at all. And when people tell me that, I'm like, dude, just take a break. I know it's hard because you feel behind. But, I had to wait 3 years between most Stormlight Archive books. So
that's cool to hear that.
I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Yeah, because when in 2020, I had read right before I started my channel, I had read all the Stormlight books, all 4 of the Stormlight Archive books. I had read the 2 novellas. I had read all the Mistborn books that were out, the 6 books that were out. I had read Warbreaker. I had read Skyward and Starsight. I'd read or listened to the original. So I'd listened or read so much Sanderson, and I was a huge fan up until December that year. And then all of a sudden, it just all fell apart for me. And then I started my channel, and I thought I could start my channel with a bang. I could go on a big Sanderson rant or just talk about Sanderson because I've read so much Sanderson, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I was just so tired of Sanderson at that point.
Yeah.
And I do want to return eventually. I do want to read the next Stormlight book when it comes out eventually, but I needed a break. And I couldn't even bring myself to talk about it, even in a negative way, even though I felt like that probably would have gotten me views. It probably would have grown my channel, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it that way. So I feel like there has to be a balance when you have a channel between content that you're authentically passionate about and that which is going to help you grow, is going to get you somewhere, so it is going to be both.
Yeah,
and
That's my
it's a hard balance.
And like you guys do, you do have personalities. Like I'm just loud. But the
Who
thing is,
put this up?
I put that. I'm responding to Derry. I think authenticity is a bigger deal to people. Is like what you're saying. Like, Hillary, you're not going to do that because I don't want to freaking do that. And I have never thought that you've done something just because.
No, I know you haven't, Alan. You just
I've never actually thought that. But the thing is, there's this weird thing about authenticity. You see this a lot. People on BookTube, I've been noticing, people seem to think the only way that you can be authentic and genuine is to tear something apart, as if you can't be genuine and also like stuff. You see this anytime someone posts like a scathing, like skin flensing review of a book. People
they're so trustworthy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're the only booktuber out here being honest. Like, I'm so glad that you're here being authentic. And it's just like, no. Now, there are disingenuous people, but I think people who are accustomed to dealing with disingenuous people, I think a lot of times you can tell, if you don't want to be fleeced, who's disingenuous and who's not. But just because people like stuff, like, doesn't mean that they're being disingenuous. Sometimes you just read stuff that you like. Now, if every single opinion agrees with the absolute most popular opinion, and if you wager an opinion that's different than the mob and the mob retaliates, and then you make you post like a redaction and change it to the mob, at that point you're probably being a little disingenuous. But most people aren't. I don't think most people are setting out to be disingenuous. But there's this weird thing that only negative criticism is real. Positive criticism is fake. You're doing it for the clicks, doing it for the I don't know what it is. But
the clout. Yeah.
Like, no, I like most of what I read. And I also don't have a problem saying crap I don't like. But I don't understand it. I don't know why negativity is the only thing that can be honest.
Totally agree, Alan.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea completely. That if you don't like something, you have to raise it to the ground. Like, that's something I experienced a lot during Wheel of Time. Like, look, I didn't like the Wheel of Time show. I didn't like it. But during my review, I was like, but there was some stuff I did like about it. And people were like, you just had to say that because of Amazon. You're a shill. And I'm like, dude, I like literally just talked about how I disliked this for like 40 minutes. But yeah, I said some things I liked, because I'm not going to sit here and burn everything to the ground as if it's the worst piece of TV I've ever seen, because it simply isn't. It's not. And this idea of like, well, you're not being authentic because you didn't feel the way I felt about it even, it's interesting.
Yeah. That could be really, really frustrating, but what happened, Alan?
I don't even know. I wonder if Kyle had an internet problem.
I don't know.
It's nice to talk to other creators sometimes about that balance.
But I think you're doing an amazing job with that. I mean, it's just because I could tell, like I said, that. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's a really cool thing to see. And I agree. And I do think that's actually something we do see on our corner of BookTube, is a lot of people who are being authentic with what they are sharing, their passion. And I don't know. I just think it's really cool because, I don't think there are many places on YouTube that have that kind of passion and have that kind of authenticity balanced.
I do want to say, I do feel for the bigger creators who maybe, chase views more because they've made it their job. Like, I think people need to understand, like, if you are being supported by YouTube as an income, you don't really have a choice. Like, you can wax to them all, like, why don't you make your old content? It's like, well, clearly you weren't watching it because those aren't getting views. And so I have a lot of sympathy for it. BookTube is only going to ever be a hobby for me. So I don't have the worries of an income. And so, like, I do think I have a lot of sympathy for it. because I can imagine how stressful that would be. Whereas like if a video does bad for me, it's just kind of like, well, that's a bummer. I spent like 10 hours doing that and no one cares. But like it doesn't affect my daily life.
But there comes a
that's good.
size that you can get to where the thing is it is a perpetual energy machine. You have to do very minimal and it continues to increase. And if a video does bad, like at some point, and this is where like Patreon comes in. Like if you've got 1,200 people on your Patreon, if a video does poorly, you're fine. Like you're not impoverished that a video only got X amount of thousand views instead of this amount of thousand views. Like I think some really large creators like to milk this and make people think that they're one video away from poverty, which is not at all the case. People are making most of their money off of Patreon, not off of ad revenue. Like
I do think people really do. I think this really does psychologically affect people, because I was watching somebody, and nobody will know who I'm talking about because this person is on a totally other part of BookTube. BookTube is so huge. And I was watching this creator who has several tens of thousands of subscribers, like, I don't know, 80,000 subscribers. I don't know. And she was lamenting about the fact that she had to take some time off for a while due to certain things. And her last video, which she spent a lot of time and she was very passionate about, didn't get very many views, which it still got several thousand views.
Yeah, more than us. But for her,
for her, she was just like, but she was really feeling bad about herself. And in the video, she was kind of processing that and trying to say, like, you're worth more than that. Like, this is not what your worth is. Like, it was all about self-worth. And she was trying to like give this message to anybody who needs it, kind of thing, even though she was giving it to herself. And I thought, oh my goodness, like I can never dream of having 80,000 subscribers or however many she has. And that still is a message that is looping through her mind. I'm like, I don't think that ever goes away for some people.
It's just like the people studies. Let me use statistics. The like highest people that are not satisfied with their life, and people who end their own lives are upper class, affluent, like white men. Like, and it's like, why? You have all of the money and the power, and yet you are miserable. Like there's like, to quote or to paraphrase, oh my gosh, what is the Cool Runnings?
I love that
when
movie.
John Candy tells Doris about like why he cheated to win the gold and got banned from the Olympics. If you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. And that's about contentment. Like some people, it's never going to be enough. You can have 600,000 subscribers and it's still not enough. Like it's not enough. At some point you have to have some kind of contentment. And that I do feel really bad. It's hard because it's like, you freaking, what are you witching about? Like, you work from home and have all this money. Why on earth are you miserable? Come teach these freaking children. Get up really early and come teach these children, then tell me how happy you are, But I mean, I like what I do for the most part, but it's just, it's such a bizarre psychological like phenomenon that people can have everything and still be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was something that was important to me. Like when I, even when I started a channel, I tried to make it a habit to say, you're just as valuable now when you have like 5 subscribers as if you have more subscribers, or you know what I mean? Like you got to get away from that message that the numbers equate to self-worth, because that can really happen. I mean, it happens. It just happens. I mean, there's nothing else to say about that.
I'm really glad Zach's not in the chat right now. He'd be accusing me of things.
That's true.
I actually think it's funny. Like in my life, I think I'm a very content person. Like no matter where whenever I've lived, I'm like, I like where I live. Like I've just never been someone's like, oh, I've always been content. But like when it comes to a goal I have, like it's just never good enough. Like when I was in school, no grade was good enough. Like it didn't matter. Like you know what I mean? And so sometimes I do get that. This was a good conversation for me. Sometimes I do get that way about YouTube. Oh, Zach consented. This is the story I'll tell. So like, I really just wanted to get to 10,000 subscribers, Like I just wanted it so bad. And then I got it. And Zach was like, I remember the night it happened. He was like trying to do this big party. He was like, you did it. Like, woohoo. Like, aren't you so excited? He's like going on and on. And I'm like, well, now when am I going to get to 20 though? Like, it just like, I got there and it like, I just immediately was like, no, now I don't think this number is good enough. And like, I have told Zach this number. I'm like, trust me, I will be happy at this number. And he's like, no, you won't. He's like, I do not believe you. Like, you won't. Like, you will hit that and you'll be like, but.
John Candy's
and so it is. What?
John Candy from Cool Runnings needs to come talk to you.
No, and it's funny. I think it's definitely like, and I think a lot of creators probably feel that way because in general, creators share some personality traits. Like, we were motivated enough to start a channel. We were motivated enough to keep posting, which takes a lot more work than people think. Like, yeah, we're all pretty regular. And anyway, so it's interesting. And I don't think YouTube helps necessarily. Like, in case people don't know, if you have a video that does well, they give you fireworks. And if you don't, I don't know. Do you guys see that? Like, if you go on your computer, I don't know if you guys only use YouTube Studio on your phone, but if you have a video that has more views than your last 10 videos, like it's number one, they give you fireworks.
I've seen it before, but I try so hard to ignore analytics. So I'll go into YouTube Studio and I'll go right to the comments and I just try to like do this.
You but live such a healthy life. Both you and Alan. Congratulations.
I go to my demographics so that we can see the gender breakdown. We did that once. That's the first time
yeah. Yeah. Me and Alan's gender breakdowns are so different. Joanna, what is your gender breakdown?
Let me look really quickly because I did this one time and it was like, I did this when you were on Chatting with Nuts, Hillary, and I think it was
did you when we talked? Did we? Me and Jimmy talked about it, huh?
Mine equalized a little bit, Hillary. I'm at like 56 male, 54 male, 46 female now.
Yeah, it's just funny. From the very beginning of my channel, I have been 80-20, and it has almost never changed. Briefly during Wheel of Time, I think it got up to like 90-10, but it's back male female.
90% male?
90% male.
What?
Audience, it's under audience,
80% male now. It's been almost since day one. It has been 80-20.
Why?
Right now, it is for me. It is 74% male and 26% female.
Yeah, so you are similar to me. I think it's the book series I tend to talk about. I also think, like Alan, you were a lot more within the booktube community than I was. So you have a lot more, like, I think other creators following you, and a lot of the creators tend to be more female oriented on YouTube. I think that might be part of it. I feel like I'm not as much in the community as you guys are.
I consider myself generally unpleasant.
That's not true.
I am curious though, Hillary, because that's something I'm always looking up to you because you are in the, I would say, more in the adult fantasy arena, and you have a huge channel. and you have a huge channel. I don't know. Am I not thinking of people? But I'm sure there are a few. But I can't think of many female adult fantasy focused channels that are pretty big, that are as big as you.
Well, that's very kind. I know there are other ones. I do. I just don't do any YA, which is a little unusual. But it was actually like a thesis statement for my channel from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. I was like, I read adult fantasy. That's all I'm going to do. I hope it helps me stand out a little bit, like just to be different. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I just know that because like when I go into analytics, every time I go in there, when I do look at it, they're like, your channel is similar to the Fantasy Network and Philip Chase and Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. I don't think Alan comes up in mind.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, it does that to me all the time.
Oh, I want to go look
and I'm like,
tell me who my overlapping people are.
Yeah. And so I just think it's interesting because I'm like, I don't see any female booktubers that I'm like, and I'm way smaller than all of these other giants who are coming up in those stats. Mm-hmm. Speaking of giants, we have
it's just interesting. I am
Fantasy Network in the chat.
Hey Jimmy. I don't know. I clearly look at analytics too much. I didn't even think I was that bad on analytics because I don't go into like the deep dives. Like I don't care when people click off my video. I mean, sometimes I'll look at it occasionally, but I don't look at that very often. But I don't
either, really. But
I'm just like, whatever. Like I talk about boring stuff. If you're going to click off, you're going to click off. Okay. It's the reason I don't have any ads in my videos because I figure people are going to click off more frequently anyway. So I better not put an ad or they'll like peace out in the middle of this video essay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I turn off your videos if they don't have, hey nerds, what's up? Bow, 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 bow. I don't have that. I'm turning it out.
See after the jump.
Yeah. Oh yeah. See after the jump. If I don't get see after the jump, I'm not watching it.
I know after the jump only appears now in about 50% of my videos. It has to be long enough to justify the after the jump.
I only watch 50% of your videos.
If it's like under 6 minutes, I'm like, it doesn't justify after the jump.
It does, because I won't watch it otherwise. I won't watch it.
Good to know, Alan. You're my core audience, so I better listen.
I am your.
I am too. I already said I click on your videos, even when they have 0 views.
So
I'm
nice
like,
of you.
click. I don't really do that for everybody, but yeah, I do. I click on your videos so quickly. And I just don't comment all the time because I notice your comment section is so flooded. But I was like so excited to have you on because I was like, now I get to actually talk to her.
Here's a question for you guys. Do you respond to every comment?
I do.
Okay, I do too.
I do. But I don't get as many comments as you probably.
I think that's actually the worst thing for my mental health. That's instead of analytics, like that's what I need to stop doing is going in my comment section. What about you, Alan? You respond to most of yours too, right?
So the problem is my videos go up in the morning and I'm teaching. So I read every comment, but a lot of times because I've taught what I'm teaching so many times. I can speak and glance at my phone to see the comment, but I can't respond to it. And so by the time I get home, a lot of times I just have like a deluge and I'm like, I can't answer all of these. And then I get overwhelmed and then I leave it. And then some videos, I don't answer any comments because of that. And then some I'm really good about. It just depends on how busy I am at school. I'm much better at responding to comments in the summer than I am.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it just takes a long time because also I'm not good at small talk. Like it's not something I excel at. So a lot of times I don't know what to say to comments other than like if they say something that excites me, I'll go, yes. Or like, I hope you like it. But very rarely is like the comment that, I need to like engage with. So I just get tired of typing.
Yeah.
Watching. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I never get tired of typing. Yes, but it doesn't like it's not appropriate for everything. So a lot of times,
I hate it when I don't know what to say, and that's very rare for me. That's very rare for me. I always feel like I know how to respond to comments, but every now and then I'll get a comment that I don't know how to respond to
other people, and I'm just not. I'm not adept at.
It's so not true. It's so not true.
It is. You just have.
I've met you in person. I know that you're good at talking.
At a nerd book convention with a bunch of nerds talking about nerd books. I mean, yeah, I'm probably okay there, but I don't know how to.
That's all BookTube is a nerd convention with nerd people, just digital.
I know, but as soon as people start exchanging pleasantries, I'm like, I don't know what to say other than thank you. Like I know how to show gratitude. Like thank you for watching. I say that a lot. Thanks for watching. That kind of stuff. I hate the fact that YouTube changed the usernames. So now I have to recognize people by pictures because I know it doesn't show the username I'm used to seeing. So I go by their icon photo because I don't know who at Philip Chase, the best of fantasy is. I just noticed that goofy black and white photo of Philip.
I feel that way too, by the way. I feel so honored that I get answered with actual words so often from Ellen. I feel the same way. I'm like so happy when you come.
It's much easier for my friends that I talk to, like on the reg. Like if Hillary ever comments on something, I'm like, this is a rare feat. Hillary's usually throwing hands, saying something mean. And like
no,
on the last setting with Nuts I was on, it's like, why didn't I get I'm reading Jade Legacy 2. Why didn't I get an angry text? I'm like, I don't have your phone number, Hillary. I have Phillips. Yeah. So I texted him angrily.
I did say that. I was gonna say I watch more BookTube and I almost never comment on it.
I do that a lot.
I don't know why. Like I watch stuff and I don't comment, and like I feel bad because like part of being in the community is like commenting on people's videos. But I tend to just like watch in the background and then I'm not kind of like in the position for myself to like comment. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the problem. Yeah. So
We talked about that. I know Alan and I sometimes batch watch videos, and then I'll try to go back later and comment on them, but sometimes I just don't get around to it.
I no longer.
So
I DM Bookborn now when I watch her stuff. I come back and I say you're wrong. Whatever conclusion. I hate everything about this video. It's always hostile. It's all like, and I had a crisis of conscience recently, and I said, Hillary, how are we friends when all I do is shout at you? Like literally, I said that. I'm like, like
that was like the exact message you sent me.
Literally, I had just a self-reflective moment. I'm like, why? How are you friends with me? Because all I do is shout at you. And
same here. You're mean to me too.
What was my response, Alan?
I don't know. Like that's how you're used to interacting with people or something. That's how.
No, I was like, I think it's funny. I was like, that's my humor. I never take it personally when you come yell at me.
I shout at you because you were a traitor. You crawled up from the top and hitched your wagon to Philip and the 20Kers.
Well, speaking of Philip, I am currently reading Philip's book right now. And I guess the question is,
where is it? I'm sorry. I took it off. There it is.
Oh. So what are you all reading right now?
What are you reading, Alan?
Oh, I'm finishing the Cicero trilogy. I'm watching the collapse of the Roman Republic, and very sad for the fate of the current political system.
Fascinating.
Oh, are you loving this trilogy?
It's absolutely fantastic. It is
wow.
It is Roman historical fiction, but it is an absolute masterclass in the human quest for power and the things we will do to have power. And
I am so interested in this topic.
And the horse trading we will do, the principles we will sacrifice for, I guess, the greater good, or what we perceive as the greater good, or just sometimes just venal, self-interest. It could literally be written about the political system today. It is absolutely, it's absolutely fascinating.
I know that like fantasy constantly goes over this idea of like power and power corrupting, but that's actually something I really want to dig into. I think that would be fun to do a deep dive into some studies, or find out what psychologically happens when people what actually happens in the brain that causes people to get addicted to power. Like, how does it actually really corrupt a person?
Watch Bookborn.
Yeah.
You'll see.
Apparently I'm addicted to power.
That's so mean.
Anyway, what are you reading right now? Dead House Gates right now.
Yay!
Yeah, so I started Dead House Gates. The book I'm most excited to read, though, that's been on my shelf for ages, and I just keep having to do other stuff like SPFBO or, models is just The Trouble with Peace. I've been dying to get to the last trilogy of Abercrombie. And that is after Dead House Gates, I'm allowing myself, I don't care. That's actually not true. I have an arc, and if it comes in the mail, I'll have to read that first. But after that, I don't care what anyone says. I just want to read A Trouble with Peace.
Well, I'm actually. Oh wait, so
Mark Lawrence's new book.
Oh, okay.
Book that wouldn't burn.
Cool. Mm-hmm. That's exciting. Yeah. So wait, The Trouble with Peace. Is that Age of Madness?
Age of Madness. Mm-hmm. The first book in Age of Madness.
I thought Little Hatred was.
Oh, A Little Hatred. A Little Hatred. Sorry, Trouble with Peace is the other one. Sorry, A Little Hatred. I'm excited to read A Little Hatred.
That's actually the next book I'm planning on picking up.
Oh, really?
Okay, yeah. So if you're interested in having a discussion when you finish,
I'll let you know. Dead House Gates is probably going to take a while, and then I'll read Mark Lawrence's book. I don't think it's going to take very long, but then I will message you.
Message me.
Get to it.
Because I think it'd be so much more fun to discuss that trilogy than to.
Yeah, I'm really eager because once I finish that, I'll have read the entire First Law, and I'm just really excited. For that. So
yeah, I skipped Sharp Ends, but otherwise
why though? Sharp Ends was so good.
Oh, maybe I should then. Maybe I should go.
It's fun. It's fun. It's very fun and very short. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Yay. And I know tomorrow night, Alan and I, by the way, are going to be discussing Shogun Part 3, the middle section of that, over on Alex's channel.
Double Alan.
Yay. And people are excited about Dead House Gates.
Yeah. I am only 50 or 60 pages in.
It's an intense book. Wow.
Maybe a little more. I don't know. I'm enjoying it already.
Oh, good.
So,
I'm glad you're liking
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll have to hear Alan's thoughts on Dead House Gates after you finish it because they're fun.
I think is Dead House Gate the one we want you to come on for, Alan?
Yeah, Dead House Games
Or
is my favorite one.
Everybody, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I get very excited about Dead House Games.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
But I mean, I have hot takes. Again,
I actually agree with his hot
I would
takes.
still hate certain characters because they're annoying and unpleasant. And I don't care. I don't care if it's a guy. I don't care if it's a girl. If you're going to be annoying and unpleasant, I'm not going to like you. I don't like annoying, unpleasant characters.
Good night, Anita.
I want people to be kind to one another. Anyway, there's a certain storyline that I like the best that is not 100% not going to be your favorite storyline.
It's 100% not going to be my favorite storyline.
Yeah, because there's war in it. Like
perfect.
it's the war storyline. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I'll definitely watch that live show. That'll be fun.
As long as your favorite isn't Ikariam and Mappo walking around looking at old stuff.
Oh man.
I'm enjoying Mappo right now, so time will tell. There's only been like one chapter for stuff though.
Okay. Give it time to wear on you.
I've only read 2 chapters.
We've been going for quite a while, 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I know that Hillary and I turned into pumpkins after a while.
I know. I'm so glad we share that.
Yeah.
My wife says the same thing. It's her pumpkin time, she calls it. I gotta go say hi.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and Evie says that too, by the way.
Sorry I crashed, by the way. Sorry I crashed your party.
What? You were invited to crash the party, so
well, I know, but still.
You're a very welcome guest. You're welcome anytime to Why Read. Everybody hear that now. I did say that in episode 1 because I had Alan in episode 1. I said, you are welcome back anytime.
That's right, guys. Get ready.
I'm true to my word.
I just lurk until people say mean things about me and then I pop in and glare.
But it's fun to have you glare on the screen instead of in the comments. I mean, I don't mind it in the comment section. Everybody loves it in the comment section too.
One day,
it's even more fun on the screen.
Hillary and I will rant about something again one day too.
Alan, I got an idea during this live. I'm going to message you after.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to go ahead and end the live here though. But and thank you so much. Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you so much, PJ. All right. Well, have a great rest of your evening, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.